Margaret Smith. I chair the Planning Commission for the town of Los Gatos, and I am calling the meeting of April 23rd, 2014 to order. Mr. Paulson, could you please call the roll?
Commissioner Erickson.
Here.
Commissioner Sayak. Here. Commissioner Badami.
Here.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
Here.
Commissioner Talasfor.
Here.
Vice Chair Birch.
Here.
Chair Smith.
Here. I would like to ask everyone to stand and join Commissioner Talasfor in the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, and welcome to the meeting. The town of Los Gatos strongly encourages active participation in the public process. We believe it is the cornerstone of democracy, and so we're encouraging as many people as want to participate in our public hearings. There are several ways for members of the public to participate. One is that written comments are accepted on any agenda item. You can feel free to email them or deliver them to the staff prior to the meeting. Also at the meetings, there's two ways that you can address the commission. One is that during the verbal communication period, once you fill out a card, which is on the back bench of where you're seated, you can address the commission for up to 3 minutes on any item that is not on the agenda. That's during verbal communication. Then when I call the agendized items, the members of the public can make their comments during the public comment period. And during that time, you can speak up to 3 minutes to discuss the issue on the agenda. If you wish to address the commission tonight, I ask that when you step forward to the podium, you please pull the microphone down close to you. So that we can hear you and that you direct your comments to the commission. I would also ask members of the audience if you can please turn off your electronic devices, or at least make sure they're not going to be ringing during the meeting. We as commissioners are required to shut our phones off completely, not just put them on silence. I'd like to move on now to the approval of minutes. The minutes for the April 9th, 2014 meeting of the Commission were distributed in the packet for this evening's meeting. Are there any corrections or additions to the meeting? Yes, Commissioner Sayak?
I have no correction or addition, but did want to note that I was not present, but did watch the tape, so can vote for the accuracy.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. May I have a motion to adopt the minutes? Commissioner Birch?
I make a motion to adopt the minutes of the April 9th Planning Commission meeting.
And is there a second? Commissioner Talasfor?
I'll second that motion.
All right, thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor? Aye. And it has passed unanimously. Mr. Paulson, are there any requested continuances this evening?
No.
All right. In addition to their service on the Planning Commission, Commission members also serve on various subcommittees. And do I have any reports this evening from a subcommittee? Commissioner O'Donnell.
Yes, at 4 o'clock today, we had a meeting of the Historic Preservation Committee. We considered 7 items today. It was a very interesting meeting. Just to run through them quickly with you. We considered some modifications to an existing home at 327 University. We did approve the concept and asked for further drawings. On 221 Wilder, another nice older home, a request for some additional lighting, skylighting, because of the darkness of the home, and that was approved. On Tate Avenue, that is also a pre-41 home. There was a request to substitute some older style windows for some windows that really don't fit that house quite well, and that was approved. On University Avenue, that large brick old building, which is an office building, the new owner of that building is making important improvements on that house, on that building. And there was a minor request today, which we did approve. And then finally, just by way of advice, a homeowner on 120 Dover Street wanted to install a metal roofing on his roof, and we gave serious consideration to that. And although typically it would not be approved, under certain circumstances it is approved. And after a very thorough discussion of that roofing, it was approved.
Thank you, Commissioner O'Donnell. We had just one desk item tonight, Mr. Paulson?
That's correct. It's desk item for item number 2.
All right. Has everyone had an opportunity to read the desk item? All right, thank you. There are no items on the consent calendar this evening, and there are no continued public hearings. Commissioner Bondami, I understand that you will need to recuse yourself from items 1 and 2, so we're going to adjust the agenda this evening so that we take item 3 first, and so that we make sure we have your participation from item 3 before you need to leave the dais this evening. So now we're going to all right, sorry, is there anyone in the audience who would like to make a verbal communication on any item not on the agenda this evening? All right, I have no cards, so we're going to move on then. I will now move to the public hearing portion of our agenda, and I'm going to begin with agenda item 3. The Commission is being asked to consider whether the 5-year capital improvement program for fiscal years July 1, 2014 to June 30, 2019 is consistent with the general plan and the Hillside Specific Plan, and that if that is our finding, we forward a recommendation of approval to the Town Council. Before I begin, are there any disclosures from a commissioner on this item? Seeing none, I understand, Mr. Morley, you will be giving the report this evening.
That's correct. Thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Matt Morley, Director of Parks and Public Works. I have a short verbal presentation for you this evening on a highlight of several of the projects that we have before you in the 2014-15 5-year CIP. So I'll jump right into providing that overview and highlight a couple of the projects, some of which you've heard before in past years, some of which are new. The first project is the Keto Road Bridge project, where we're replacing 2 bridges on Keto Road. The project's been in the works for many years, and the City of Saratoga is the lead on that project. They're continuing to advance that project, have replaced the design consultant that went out of business, and are continuing to work that project forward in coordination with the town, and doing quite a bit of community outreach to keep everybody up to speed on that project. Construction on that project is due for completion in 2016, assuming that they're able to do the right-of-way acquisitions on the adjacent properties to make that project happen. Another project that we have coming forward that I think you've heard of before is the Almond Grove Street replacement project. Essentially, we'll be over a series of projects replacing all of the concrete streets in the Almond Grove area. We've hired a design consultant at this point to work with us on the design, and are in the process of scheduling a community meeting for late in May to be able to bring our initial design concepts to the community and engage the community for input on those designs. The construction on that project will occur in 2015-16 for the first set of projects. We do expect that there'll be a funding gap for the final phases, but we'll be able to address those more firmly as we finalize the design and the scope of the project. We are also doing an intersection improvement that's in play right now on the intersection of Highway 9 and University Avenue. We've been doing some utility relocations, and ultimately we'll add some left turns onto Highway 9 from University Avenue and upgrade the traffic signals at that intersection. And that one's should complete early in the next fiscal year, so fall sometime of 2014 for completion there. On the area of new projects, We've budgeted in a complete streets project for the next fiscal year. It's a small allocation of funds, but we want to break the ice, so to speak, on complete streets and get a pilot project in play. We haven't yet identified the exact location. We have several that we're kicking around, But ultimately, this will be an opportunity for us to have an installation and be able to do some evaluation of how that works for us and what our Complete Streets program will look like moving forward. We're also proposing to install several additional electric vehicle charging stations in the town, mostly around the downtown area, here around Civic Center, at the sports park, and 2 at downtown parking lots. The demand for the existing EV charging stations is high, and this will provide us the opportunity to meet some of that additional demand. On the parks side of our department, we have had an ongoing project for a pedestrian bridge that would go from the sports park across the Los Gatos Creek to the Creek Trail. We've been working with the neighborhoods to try and make that project successful, but have run into quite a bit of resistance because of the necessary elevation of the bridge. Really is intrusive in the backyards of the neighbors. So this year we've been working with the Water District and county parks to try and identify a location closer to the dam. And we're notified today that they're not necessarily interested in moving forward. The county parks is not interested in moving forward that project. So our recommendation at this point, without a great solution there, is going to be to return some grant funds to the Water District and reallocate the $500,000 in town funds to other capital projects. Another new project that we have coming forward is a Highway 9 connection to the Los Gatos Trail. So this will be a bike connection from Highway 9 to the trail. We're doing an initial design that will allow us to apply for some grants, and there's some great grant opportunities to fund that project. That one is at the very early stages now, but definitely in our CIP and something that we'd like to make successful. And then moving on to the facilities side, we've been working on converting the old library into space for Los Gatos Museums. We're continuing to move that project forward and should have completion towards the end of the calendar year on that project to make it available for museums to occupy. That's a quick highlight. You have additional projects that are in your packet in the budget. Certainly happy to address any of the projects that I highlighted tonight or any others that you may have interest in. And again, we're looking for your confirmation that the CIP is in alignment with the general plan and the Hillside specific plan tonight. So with that, I'm available for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Morley. And let's see about questions. Commissioner Talasfor?
I was glad to hear about the electric charging stations. So as you expand into town, do you know where, after the downtown area, where you might expand next? Is there a need, or people have let you know that there's a need?
Yeah, so there's definitely a need. We're seeing that with the utilization on our existing charging stations. We've definitely targeted the sports park, which starts to move away from the downtown proper a little bit. So that'll be one of the definite installs for the next 4 that we do. Beyond that, we haven't identified any additional locations. It becomes a little bit of a juggling act, identifying where the demand might be and where we have town property to do the installations. So, for instance, we may look at some additional park locations, although the demand may not be as high in those particular locations.
The reason I ask is that it says as well as in public parking lots. So I'm thinking that public parking lots, does that include shopping center parking lots or not?
No, it would only include town-owned parking lots.
And that's the parks.
And that sort of focuses downtown.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Because it seems like we're going to be needing them, I hope,
Yeah,
at shopping centers.
Hopefully some of the businesses in the shopping centers will start to see that need as well, and in the interest of bringing their customers in, we'll start to implement some installations.
So does that become a partnership between the retail shopping centers and the town, that they would put in the charging stations?
It generally becomes an initiative that the shopping center would do on their own. They would work through the building department for permitting. The charging stations and the infrastructure are fairly straightforward and easy to put in, so it's not a big investment, but the businesses certainly need to realize that there's a benefit there.
Right. I would hope that the town might be a little more, how do I say it, more proactive in, getting a program going where they could, alert the shopping center owners to that fact that it's not that expensive and mostly needed here in town.
Certainly, we can work that direction and try and spread the word on the need.
Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner Telesfor. Commissioner Sayak.
Thank you. 3 quick questions. The first with regards to Complete Streets. Very excited to see that hit there. I wanted to ask you, I know you do not have a site identified, but what is the process to identify those sites? And is there opportunity for anyone to participate?
So the second part first, of course, we enjoy the participation from anyone on potential locations. We are engaging with Safe Routes to School as being a big influencer in the community there, and certainly schools the pathways to schools are great opportunities for complete streets and making the streets more bicycle and pedestrian friendly as a main element. And we are sort of identifying the bike and pedestrian pathways as a portion of the complete streets. That would be the part that we would focus on this initial pilot installation. So yeah, if you can imagine some of the areas on the major thoroughfares that have heavy pedestrian traffic in the morning from commuters to school, that would be the areas we'd want to target.
Okay, definitely. So then if you could just keep us apprised, and I'll make sure that, at least for my part, I'd like to make sure that the Safe Routes to School people are aware of when this will happen, because I know there have been several sites that I've heard of that they would like improved, so that'd be great.
And I myself participate with the Safe Routes in their meetings, so we're definitely engaged.
Okay, second question. You mentioned the sports park and reallocating funds for the bridge.
Right.
This may be a controversial subject, but is there any opportunity to re-energize the discussion about lighting at the sports park?
But definitely a controversial subject. I think the original commitment on the design and the construction of the sports park was that there would not be, and the commitment was there would not be lighting at the sports park. So it has not been part of the discussion at this point.
Okay, fair enough. And then the third question was the connection of Highway 9 to the trail. How far along will that begin, and have they identified where that connection to the trail will occur?
Yeah, so the initial thought, and again, this is in the preliminary design stage now, so subject to change, but the initial thought is that it will come, as you're headed east on Highway 9, where the sidewalk ends now, we would continue that sidewalk down along the embankment, across the creek there with a bridge, and connect to the trail there. On the other side, on the other side of Highway 9, it would have a clover leaf up to catch the other direction.
Okay,
if
great.
that makes sense.
No, it does. It does. And what's the projection on that?
So again, this is a grant-funded project, so
Okay.
dependent on funding associated with it. We're making a mad dash now for a grant deadline in May. Doing some preliminary scoping on that project. So assuming that funding comes through, we'd be looking towards the end of this fiscal year, maybe early into next fiscal year for completion of that.
Okay.
Of course, there's some coordination we need to do with other property owners, including Caltrans for that particular project.
Sure. Okay. Well, thank you for the update.
Mr. Morley, I do have 2 questions for you. And one, just as I'm thinking about Almond Grove, I know that last year, they were also slated to have street repairs, and there was a major construction project going on Tate and Bean with St. Mary's Church, and construction trucks up and down, so it made sense for it not to happen until that construction was completed. And what I want to do is just understand the sheet that I'm looking at, which is C9, and the carry forward amount is there, but there's no proposed breakdown, even though the dates above show that certain things are going to happen, which obviously cost money. So if you could just walk me through how to read a sheet like this.
Right. So that sheet shows you where in what fiscal year the dollars are budgeted. So you can see that in prior years there was a small amount budgeted in 13-14, a small amount budgeted, and then into this 14-15 fiscal year. There's $4 million budgeted for that project. Those dollars will continue to carry through the additional years, but the point with the no additional funding in the out years is that the $4 million is the limit of the funds associated with that project. So we'll continue to spend on those dollars. They do carry from year to year. So if we're in mid-construction at the end of a fiscal year, those dollars would carry to the next year to allow us to carry forward with the project.
And as then I understand the information above that this is not going to be completed until the winter of 2016, correct? I'm reading that correctly?
That's correct.
All right. And then is there a plan where we know which streets, you've already decided where you're working from the top of the hill or the one end to the other?
Yeah, so we're continuing to work through the exact streets and what order we're going to proceed with the streets. It's a little bit tricky because they're concrete streets and they're fairly deep sections on the concrete streets. So when we do the work, it's going to be very disruptive to the neighborhood. So we're trying to work through a phasing plan that will allow us to address sort of keeping the neighborhood alive and not cutting off their transportation.
Well, and the reason why I asked the question is actually in response to Commissioner O'Donnell's report from the Historic Preservation Commission, which a number of those properties are up for major renovations, which means, again, construction trucks going up and down, and you're trying to coordinate your own work on the streets. So I'm just raising this as an issue that I see needs a lot of coordination.
And we'll continue to coordinate that with the community as we're moving into and towards the projects, and we'll work back with planning and building on additional projects that may affect the site.
Thank you. And then the second question I have is more generic, and it's I think all of us as residents have to wind ourselves around the PG&E work that has been going on, and now it's on Main Street, but it was in the downtown, and a lot of the streets are torn up, but I don't see money in the budget to go back and fix those streets. So is that a PG&E responsibility? I know we talked about striping, but we're not really talking about resealing the streets.
So PG&E will restore the streets following their project. Matter of fact, they're scheduled to do that next Monday and Tuesday. They should be out paving on Main Street to sort of rehab the street back to a drivable condition. It has been quite a project for them out there replacing the gas line, and they have quite a few additional regulations now than what they've had in the past. So the progress has been a little bit slower than what we might have hoped. But ultimately that should complete in the next couple of weeks. We do have street maintenance dollars in our budget on an annual basis, and we use that to do overcoats and sealing of streets and chip seal and that kind of a thing as a maintenance item. Main Street's actually getting fairly close to needing some maintenance work, so that will happen in the next year or two. But specific to the PG&E plan, they will restore the street.
And I also saw them quite a bit on North Santa Cruz, which is why I'm asking, because I could see that there's some work that's going to be done on the parking lots, sealing the parking lots again. So I just wondered. All of that's going to be coordinated.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. We issue and we watch quite carefully what work is on the books for a particular area and what roadway work is moving through the process so that we can coordinate those.
All right. Well, thank you, Mr. Morley. Any further questions? All right. I have no cards for this item, so if anyone is out there that wishes to make comments, please acknowledge yourself. Raise your hand. All right. If not, then we're going to close the public portion of this part of the public hearing and ask commissioners if you have any further questions of staff, you want to make a comment on the capital improvement plan, or you want to introduce a motion for consideration by the commission. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I have no questions. I thought the report was very thorough and very informative, and I was satisfied with it. We are to receive any public testimony, which we've offered. We're supposed to find the project as described consistent with the general plan and the hillside specific plan, and if we do that, to recommend to the town council that they approve that CIP. So I would like to make a motion, if that is proper, that we do find the projects as outlined in that current CIP consistent with the general plan and the hillside specific plan.
Thank you. Do I have a second to the motion? Commissioner Sayak?
I'll second the motion.
All right. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. This passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Morley, for your report. I will now move on to agenda item number 1, which is an application requesting approval to operate a formula retail business known as We Olive with a wine bar at 112 North Santa Cruz Avenue on property zoned C2, APN number 529-03040, conditional use permit application U14-004. May I have a show of hands from the commissioners who have visited the property? Are there any disclosures by a commissioner for this item? Oh, Commissioner Bandami's already left?
We'll let the record reflect that she recused herself based on the 500-foot rule and for financial reasons on the other one.
Thank you. Ms. Mosley, I understand you're going to give us the report this evening.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Commissioners. The existing 3,298 square foot building is broken up into 4 tenant spaces, 3 ground floor commercial tenants and an upstairs office space. The property is located at 112 North Santa Cruz, just south of spacing on the name of that street. Apologize for that.
Grays Lane?
Grays Lane, yes. And the proposed project will combine 2 of the commercial tenant spaces previously occupied by Sushi on the Run and Maria's for a combined space of 2,158 square feet. The site has a large rear patio and accessory structure, which is included in the 2,158 square feet to be used by the proposed tenant. The layout of the site and the rear patio have made it difficult to find a retail-focused tenant for the space. The applicant is requesting approval to operate a formula retail, olive oil, and wine store with a wine bar to the rear of the tenant space. The applicant is proposing the wine bar as a complement to the retail, and that the intent is to showcase the products for sale, providing customers with quality demonstrations of their use and application. The majority of the food items prepared in the wine bar would include products available for direct sale within the store and would predominantly include California wines and olive oils, as well as balsamic vinegars, mustard, and tapenades. The wine bar would be located at the rear of the tenant space and include part of the rear patio. It would include food and wine sales and would be limited to persons of 21 years of age and older. Within the wine bar area, the applicant is proposing to offer wine for tasting by the ounce or the glass. Food service would be available during all hours that alcohol service is provided. The applicant is proposing to operate a retail store from the retail portion from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday through Friday, Saturday from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m., and Sunday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. The wine bar would open later at noon daily and close at 7 or 9 p.m. respectively, along with the retail store. Off-premise sales of alcohol would be limited to the same hours as the wine bar. The applicant is proposing to retain both the retail and restaurant elements of the existing uses in their proposal. It should be noted that the applicant has more than 7 other strictly retail locations, and while there is a strong retail component to the proposal, it would be considered a formula retailer, which is also strongly discouraged in the C2. As a result, the Commission should carefully consider the potential impacts of the conversion of this space in the downtown. The proposed use complies with town parking requirement regulations and would not have an increase in traffic according to the International Traffic Engineer calculations. Based on the applicant's intent to serve alcohol without requiring meal service and the direction of Ordinance 2021 regarding conversion of retail space in the downtown, staff recommends the Planning Commission forward a recommendation for denial of the proposed application to the Town Council. However, it should be noted that if the Planning Commission finds merit with the application, the required findings for approving a conditional use permit would need to be made. This completes staff's report. We are here if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Mosley. Are there any questions of Ms. Mosley at this time? Seeing none, we will now open the public portion of the public hearing, and we're going to give the applicant an opportunity to address the commission. An applicant has 5 minutes to address the commission, and when the yellow light goes on, you will have 30 seconds left. And have you already filled out a card, sir?
Yes.
Can you just give me your name, and then I'll know who you are?
My name is Jos Speinerberg.
All right, thank you. And could you pronounce that last name again for me?
Speinerberg.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to put it phonetically on this card.
It's a common problem.
All right, thank you. You've pulled the microphone to you, so let's begin. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Great, thanks. Ms. Smith. My name is Jos Speinerberg, and I'm a Dutch native. I've been in the Bay Area for about 20 years. 12 of those years, I've been a homeowner in San Jose. I became interested in the olive oil business by doing a visit to a Re-Olive store in Paso Robles. And during that visit, I decided to try a career change and get into the olive and wine business. We have found a very nice spot at 112 North Santa Cruz Avenue that will fit our needs greatly. And now I'd like to introduce Frank Mercurio, who's sitting right next to me. He is the owner of Re-Olive LLC, the franchisor. And I'd also like to introduce Brian Bachman, Deborah Armstrong, and Bob Belleville, seated over there, who represent the landlord. I'd like to ask staff to start the video that we prepared for our presentation.
Re-Olive is definitely the olive oil experience. That's what makes this unique and special, is the fact that this is not something that they would be able to find at their local grocery store. It's a very unique and special product in that way, and complimentary tastings help for them to find the one that's right for them. We've got olive oils from every different part of California because it's such a diverse growing climate that produces such wonderful extra virgin olive oil. One of the things that's really interesting about, or unique about, the olive oils that we feature is that not only are they certified by the California Olive Oil Council, but most of them are award-winning olive oils, either at California fairs or on a national level. So these are the best of the best that California has to offer. We're not just limited to great extra virgin olive oil in the store. In addition to that, our guests can expect to find gourmet tapenades, olives, different dressings, spreads, marinades, all sorts of different gourmet foods that again are unique and different. And again, you can try them all on a daily basis throughout the store. They're available, and if you don't see something that's available for tasting, ask a staff member. We'll get you something to taste. Definitely when they first walk in, they're going to be greeted by a friendly and enthusiastic staff that's also educated about all of our products. The impression that we get from our guests is that when they first walk into the store, they're really impressed by the way the store looks and feels. It's really that sort of sensory experience of coming in and realizing that this is a special place that they want to spend some time. We find a team that can work with our guests and educate our guests about the great products that we have. Much like our olive oil, we specialize in very small case production wines. So artisan premium wines that come exclusively from California, but they're not produced on a mass scale. It allows for us to find wines that our guests would not otherwise be able to find at their local, big box store, supermarket. So in some cases, we're bringing in wines that we only get a case or two of, that the winery only produced 100 cases of. So those are very special artisan handmade products that really fit with what we do in general. So another unique aspect of the wine program is that we offer all of the wines by the taste, by the half glass, and by the glass. So that gives guests the opportunity to really customize wine tastings based on our staff's recommendations, based on their preferences with wine. And that's a great way for them to be able to find that special wine. With both the retail olive oil and gourmet foods and also with the wine bar, the nice thing about being able to taste, obviously, before you purchase is that you have that assurance. On the wine bar side, as we're offering folks flights, we also offer those bottles for retail purchase. So every day we have guests that will find a really special wine. It speaks to the connection between the tasting program and then the purchasing power in retail. So and it's great because they found wines that they will not find anyplace else.
Thank you. I think I have 20 seconds left, so I'd just like to point out that we did get some additional letters of support that we handed out, including a letter from the landlord, people that are in the olive oil industry, and also from Los Gatos residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Don't leave the podium, all right? Do we have any questions of the applicant? Commissioner O'Donnell.
I was impressed by your presentation. I have one question, and that is, I'm trying to assess the potential volume of bottles of wine that you might sell.
I'd like to defer to Frank Mercurio for this question, since there's a lot of...
He could come up now
Great.
if he's available. And when you do, I know the chair would instruct you to give your name and your address, please.
Frank Mercurio. My address is in Del Mar, California. Is that good enough? Yeah, okay. So, as far as, every store varies, but if we take La Jolla as an example of what it will be like here, I think anywhere from maybe 500 to, 700 bottles of retail wine for off-premise consumption.
Over what period?
Per month, yeah.
Thank you.
And it's usually purchased, by 1 or 2 bottles at a time. People taste something and just take something home. So not by cases. We don't sell a lot. It's just small purchases, 1 to 2 bottles per customer, perhaps.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Birch.
I'd like to ask a little bit about the use of the back patio.
Sure.
I saw in the information that you often have the growers of the olives there.
Correct.
Do you also plan to have people from the wineries come and speak and give presentations about the wines, or do you try to limit that just to the olives?
Yes, but we probably will not use the back patio for that, because we will do that in the 21 and over area if and when we have such event.
Okay. Can I ask one other question? I thought I read somewhere in here, but I couldn't find it again, that you also do some maybe larger gatherings occasionally. How often do you have those, and how many people typically come to one of your larger events?
We know we are restricted by the parking rules, so we would restrict that to about 20 people.
Okay. And how often?
Maybe 1 or 2 a month at most,
Okay.
and maybe we can...
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Sayak.
Thank you for the presentation. 2 questions more about the overall business instead of... So there are 7 locations, is that correct?
Correct, but Frank is probably the best one to answer that.
And I've heard La Jolla, I've heard Paso Robles. Could you tell me where the other 5 are, and specifically what's the closest one to Los Gatos?
Well, there's 11 actually total stores
Okay.
in operation now. So all
Okay,
11.
so what's the closest
The
then?
closest here is San Francisco in the Marina District. There's also the Walnut Creek is probably the next closest.
Okay. And then a follow-up to that, do all 11 have an adjoining wine bar to it?
No. In 2009, we decided to sort of bring the wine and olive oil together. So we developed a prototype store in La Jolla. And now, from this point on, because it works so well, so we tried it out for about a year or so, and it really worked to synergize with the retail component. And so now we've embraced that, and now from this point on, the newer stores do have that. So right now we have one in Costa Mesa, and then we have one in Thousand Oaks that has a wine bar. So there's only 2 that have wine bars.
Okay, and you've read our staff report, so you understand some of the issues and concerns that we need to, the policies that we need to work with.
Yes.
So it's clear to me that there is a strong retail component to this, but then you have the adjoining wine bar. So can you just, based on the businesses that you have that do have the wine bar, what percentage is from retail, your revenue from retail versus the actual bar on-site tasting?
The La Jolla is a good example. Again, it's the total sales are a little over $1 million per year, and then about 65% of that comes from the retail portion, and then 35%, approximately, give or take a few percent, comes from the combined wine bar food service component.
Okay, and if one more question. On your plans, there's several areas where you distinguish it by a different color. Is that just meant to show me what's the 21 and over?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
So everything's restricted to that area. So it represents about 350 square feet. The wine service component, which is pretty close to what Sushi on the Run square footage was. So it's not too much bigger than that. So we kind of moved that that's food service area back to the back there.
Okay, but so let's say, again, trying to simplify this. If I came in on a Saturday with my 2 children, I can come in and up to this white area, purchase whatever I need to purchase, but cannot enter that beige area with them.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Talasfor?
Thank you. I have, I think, 4 questions, 2 in one area and 2 in another. So let's look at the plans again. And when I'm looking at them, I have 2 questions, and one is regarding the back patio area, and there is a gate there. Now, can you explain to me if that, because it's adjacent to a parking lot?
Correct.
So is that intended to be closed?
Yes, we intend to keep that one.
There will be not be an opening there? I wanted to be clear about that.
No, maybe if we do special events that people have to come into the back, we'll open it up on occasion. But the intent when the retail store is open, that people come in through the front.
So you'll open it up on occasion, and how will you monitor that?
So if we have these special events that are limited to the 20 people that we could invite for these, we probably will close the front of the store to be in compliance with the parking rules, and then we'll focus our.
Okay, and do you have a plan for the landscape at that area?
Yeah, it's a rough plan.
I see it's blank now, that's why I'm asking.
It's a rough plan right now. We try to make it really nice, put some olive trees in there, and also have a herb garden to also be used in our kitchen.
Okay, so we have 8 seats in the back patio. What I wanted to know is, would there ever be an occasion, and these 8 seats would be having food at the same time?
Correct.
Is that what that is
Yes.
intended for?
Yeah.
Okay. Would this ever be intended that someone could come back here? I mean, how will you monitor the restaurant? Will you have a hostess or a host that will be guiding these people back?
Yes.
What I'm more concerned about here is your wine tasting overflow. If you ever have something like that, will people stand in the back as well, or how do you plan on using this? 8 only all the time, period, or?
I guess Rioch hasn't had too much experience with actually
Well,
running.
whoever could answer the question.
Yeah, so the thing is there'll be a physical barrier from behind. So there'll be no way that anybody can access from the back part. And then, of course, the
Okay.
people will be running the retail operation, so we control all access from the front. So it'll be limited to the number of people that we have seating for, and no more.
And so in your wine tastings, can you take us through that? Are you planning on wine tastings?
Well, the wine tasting is that's part of, it's kind of an extension of our retail. So all the food is available for tasting in retail. And so we've done that here. Every wine that we have is available anytime for tasting. Now, it's not free, but it costs a per ounce fee. And that's about the same amount per ounce as it costs for a glass.
And you intend for that to be at the bar area, the tasting?
It'll be just in a 21 and over area.
Okay.
So there is a small bar section, and there'll be some seats, but I think the total.
There's 9 seats.
The
or 8
total is
seats.
21 for that whole area, combined area, both for the outside and inside, it's totally 21. So no more than 21 people will ever be in there.
Okay, so I'd like to just switch over again. I see that you not only plan on selling wine, but also beer. Is this a new concept?
It was basically, a lot of places don't produce wine, and so it's a way for us to reach out to the local, because we like to embrace, it's all about local, so we only sell California wine, California olive oil, but a lot of communities don't make those things, so there's a lot of places that do have local sort of microbrew craft beers, and so the idea was to incorporate maybe 2 or 3 of those from local suppliers. So it's really, that was the main purpose behind it. We sell very little, beer actually. It's probably just a fraction of the total sales, but it was really about just local.
Local?
Yeah, local microbrews. So it's a way to engage the community.
Okay, because I didn't recognize any of these as local to Santa Clara County or Northern California, but am I wrong?
The list you're looking at, sorry. The list we supplied as an addendum is the list from from La Jolla. So
Oh, that's what you're looking at. Okay.
Okay.
so the sample menus are from the La Jolla store, hence the local brews over
So
there.
these will be, okay, and how many, and I noticed that you also will be providing tasting experiences for people as far as, I want to say workshops, and I'm not sure that that's the right word. Is that something that you do?
Correct. So we have a great example from our Walnut Creek colleagues. They do a couple of different events, including cooking classes and also wine pairing classes. So pairing wines with food and make it an educational experience.
And that's what you plan on doing as well?
Correct.
Would that be during the day, at night? Will you close the
That
store
would be
for that, or how does that
exactly.
happen?
That would be a special event where we close the store and invite up to 20 people.
Okay, and then you are also selling food items beyond, it sounded to me, beyond your jarred tapenades, et cetera, et cetera. So what are those?
For consumption, you mean, or?
Well, yes. No, not small bites. I thought it was something that you could take away.
Yes. So
Food
besides
to take
olive oil
away
and
besides the olive oil and the tapenades and whatever else in jars and cans.
so
Packaged food in,
Just all gourmet foods, just so various like tapenades, it's really mustards.
so it's not like food in containers where
No,
you
no.
can take a fork and eat it off-site?
No, no,
Okay.
nothing like that.
All right, I wanted to be clear about that. Thank you for now.
All right, I have several questions myself, and just one of the questions is, will it only be California olive oils that you're going to carry,
that is the intention, yes.
and only California wines?
Correct.
Then in your store in New York, what do you carry?
Frank?
The store in New York isn't open yet, but there we'll prominently, it'll be all California olive oil, and it will be mostly California wines, but again, with the local aspect, we'll reach out to, there are good wines there, especially dessert wines and things like that, so we'll try to embrace some of the local artisans and bring those into the store. We'll probably represent about 10% of the total products that we offer in the wine bar component.
So maybe you want to stay up here too, because I have just a few more questions. If I could, I noticed that, of course, you do not sell wine in San Francisco, Ventura, San Luis, Paso Robles, Fresno, Austin, Folsom, Long Beach. Are those all successful stores with just the olive oil?
They are. They don't have the sales that the wine bar sort of mix does. One of the things that we hoped is that, that it's hard sometimes to get people in to taste the olive oil, things like that. It's not sort of something as common as the wine bar. So we were hoping that would help in the marketing, and it has. So that we do a lot more gross sales, total gross sales. It actually helps and increases the retail component by having the small wine bar component.
Well, I think I can just, I'll only state for myself, an olive oil store would be very welcome to someone like me. And however, I am thinking about the other component. So when I take a look at your floor plan, I notice that you're giving the same amount of space to your wine as you are to your olive oil. Is that correct?
If you include the outdoor section, I guess that's true. But I guess when we think about it, we have to assume that the weather's not always going to be. So the interior part is only around, like I say, this wine service is about 350 square feet. And I think we have maybe 750 to 800 square feet for the retail. I'm not exactly sure how but that's the total square footage dedicated to the retail component.
The reason I was just working on percentages. I think one percentage was 26% of the space, and perhaps the wine was 29%, or it was the reverse. But I know I read that in here, so that's why I was asking you do you plan on it being for sales 50-50?
For the sales, no, definitely not. I mean, we expect 65 to 70% retail sales.
No, retail of wine or retail of olive oil. I'm trying to determine if this is a feasible business for olive oil sales, or the wine has to go along with it to be sustainable.
Again, I think personally, just from having the experience of running both, and we were founded on the retail, and we were founded on having a place for artists and growers. And that still is kind of the crux of who we are. And that won't change. When Yosh was talking about some of the people coming in for the wine, we don't have as many the wine events, but we have the growers for the olive oil all the time come in. And so I think we just found that business-wise, it really helps a lot. Like all the food that's served in the wine bar feature products that we sell in the retail. So it's a great way for us to display in the context of actually how you consume the products. It's a great place because they come back there and they have olive oil on a caprese, things like that. So it helps both sides a lot.
So would you be selling the mozzarella?
No,
Okay.
not the mozzarella,
Okay.
but just the olive oil, the
that goes with it.
balsamics,
Okay.
and things like
All right.
that. Yeah.
So then I just have two more questions. One is, what is your use going to be of the building B, the accessory building way in the back? I couldn't quite tell on the plans.
So that is about a 600 square feet property. We intend to use that, the half of it for an office to run the business, storage, and then the other half as the community space that we use for special events like the cooking classes, the wine pairing classes, etc., that we talked about.
Okay, so then you brought up my last question, which is I did not see anywhere in your application where you were applying to hold cooking classes. And so I need for you to clarify that for me because it's not part of this package.
Okay. So the intent is very occasionally, maybe once, twice a month at the most, to close the store at 6 and have special events, have a cook come in and do a class for up to 20 people to talk about the application of our products in cooking. And also the other component we're thinking about is the wine pairing class, where we basically have a discussion with an invited group of people to discuss wine pairings with food pairings.
And would you charge for these classes? Is that what
Typically,
you're
yes,
saying?
yes.
All right. That concludes my questions. Commissioner Birch, did you have a question or was it answered? All right. Okay. Thank you, sir. You can have a seat.
Thank you.
Mr. Mercurio, I have a card for you. If you want to have 3 minutes to address anything, you're welcome to do so as a speaker. Okay? And you are, sir? Josh Mercurio. Okay. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Josh Mercurio, Linda Vista, San Diego, California. So my name's Josh, and I'm the manager of new store development for We Olive. I've grown up with this business. It's more than a business to us. It's a lifestyle. What's really important to us as a group is to reach out to communities like Los Gatos and promote domestic local products and living a heart-healthy lifestyle. That's what it's really about. We're not your typical retail store. When you walk into a We Olive, you're leaving with a wealth of information. It's really our job is to talk about food and get you excited to use the local products that are in the community. I kind of just fell into this, and I've always had a passion for olive oil, and especially the heart component that goes into it. My mother, she's on the board of directors of the California Olive Oil Council, so she's very immersed in the industry. If you're not familiar with them, they're the only organization that promotes domestic industry growth and product quality standards, so they set the bar for extra virgin olive oil. My father is also on the standards committee for extra virgin olive oil through his biotech company. He's always been very passionate about health. So this was a great outlet for us. When we open a store in a community like Los Gatos, the first thing that we do is really make local partnerships with other businesses. So one thing that we always strive to do is partner up with these other businesses such as bakeries, local cheesemongers, anything that fits into our theme of local artisan products, and we'll implement them in our offering. So not only are we supporting the community that way, the idea of We Olive is to not only create a unique experience that's based around education, but to show people real-world experience how higher quality local products will enhance these dishes. So that's why it's important to have the wine bar component. And I don't like the word wine bar. I call it an educational tasting room, because when you walk in, we're conveying the story of the artist and producer. They all have very interesting lifestyles. They've got into this industry because they're very passionate about it. So we're trying to tell them, so they're leaving with that wealth of information. And when the tasting room comes into play is that they can see how these fresh products that are available in the retail enhance these dishes, encouraging them to take them home and enjoy. So it's really about that synergy between very diverse components really working together for the same cause. I just want to know that, even though we are recognized as a formula store under staff, every We Olive is so unique because of the product offering, because of the local artisan vendors. So when we enter this market, we'll seek out local producers, and every store will have that local offering unique to that community, so no We Olive is one alike. I also want to talk a little bit about the community involvement. We are very passionate about with connecting and engaging the community. Guess I'm over the time.
You are, Mr. Mercurio, but stay right there. Let's see if we have any questions for you,
Okay.
all right? Thank you. Commissioner Birch.
I'd like to hear about your community involvement.
The community involvement gets me real excited because every partner is very passionate about a local organization, and we find it's not only your responsibility as a business owner to connect, but always give back. And for example, one of the great stories that we have in Ventura, Steve Toby had a fund for the culinary high school program. So he actually raises money every year, and we continue to donate as an organization to support these kids to go into culinary schools, if it's through the CIA or anything like that. Different partnerships also with local high schools. We do a lot of American Heart Association is something that we're very passionate about because they're the ones that are at the forefront of doing all these research about why olive oil, extra virgin olive oil, it fights heart disease and stroke and does all these amazing things. So we do local fundraising at schools and also just around the community that are off-site. So not only are these, you guys are talking a lot about in-store events, we do a lot of things that are out of store. If it's different partnerships through the schools, also different organizations like the Slow Movement, we've gone to them. We've also partnershiped with different organizations such as the Animal Foundation. We also do food banks, so we're always donating. It's just all about, that's what we've grown up on, and so that's a big part of our business that wasn't mentioned.
Follow-up question, yes.
Do you ever participate in local food the farmers markets?
Yes, we do. We encourage our partners to do that. I think that's really important because the people that are attending, it's a great way to get more people excited about our products and knowing about the store. So majority of our partners do that.
Good, thank you.
Commissioner Talasfor.
Thank you. You spoke about local artisans, and I'm assuming that you mean here in our Northern California, Santa Clara County, Santa Cruz County. Have you done any research at this point or communicated with local artisans here?
Yes, so we all is very well known as artisan supporters. They wouldn't be in business without us because we're solely supporting them. And so when they find out that We Olive is coming in a community like Los Gatos, they'll be knocking on our doors and talking to our corporate office about implementing the products into that store specifically and making it exclusive to We Olive. So not only are we allowing them to feature their products in our store, we're also developing them and making sure that they're improving their product lines. And the nature of the Artisan Beast is, they're going to be introduced, we're going to introduce them in our store. And essentially what we are is a marketer for them, telling the story, and then they'll grow with our brand, and then hopefully they have the opportunities to grow on. And the best part about our business, there's always up and coming people. So if they do get the opportunities to be in national change, that's when we'll part our ways and find the next best product. So.
Okay, so in other words, if I go to Paso Robles or La Jolla or San Francisco, I won't find the same artisan products there as I will here.
It's up to the franchisee's discretion to pick and choose what product he wants. You
just said that you seek out local.
Mm-hmm, yes.
So what does local mean to you?
So for instance, in Paso Robles, we have this.
But I mean, that's here in Los Gatos. What would that mean to you?
Well, we would seek them out and find who's in the community, and then see what products that they have, and then we would approve them.
Does that also mean olive oil?
Yes, of course, definitely olive oil, and California has such a diverse climate. So, like the Central Coast, they specialize in a majority of extra virgin olive oils for that region. Here, they would be more Northern California, so they'd have a different olive oil tasting bar than, say, the La Jolla or any other location.
Okay. So I think I'm having a little trouble understanding where beer follows
Beer follows. It's just
to this, to your.
The reason
vision.
why we added the beer component is because we want everyone to enjoy it, and not everyone enjoys wines or even alcoholic beverages. So, say.
So do you offer other drinks?
Yes, we have wine sodas, we have coffees, we have sparkling water, and I think that's what about making sure everyone has a really great time. For instance, I went in with my friend's mom and her friend. She didn't drink alcohol, but we served them the wine soda and a nice flute. So it's that special feeling. She feels special. She doesn't feel left out. She's still enjoying a great time. And I think when the beers fall in, some males don't drink. Some women might not drink wine, and just something to offer everyone. I think that's important.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sayak.
Since you're responsible for business development, what other areas are you, locally, close to Los Gatos, are you looking to develop a wee olive in?
Locally, probably Palo Alto area. I think that would be a really wonderful market for us.
Okay. And do you, are you envisioning a certain range? Like one of the issues with formula retail is we strive for a downtown that's unique. Mm-hmm. And so it sounds Palo Alto. Are there any other areas regionally that you're thinking of?
I'm glad you brought that up, because we're not your typical franchise company. We have a very special niche market, and so we're not looking to create thousands of units. We're looking to have 150 nationwide. We think we're pretty saturated in California actually, and looking to extend out of state. So I think that's really important to us. We're never going to create a cannibalism. We Olive is never going to be on any other corners. It's really seeking out the best locations, just like Los Gatos, and having a really well store with a really amazing partner.
So I have just a couple of follow-up questions for you. And actually, now I have three of them. I'm sure you've done your research here, and again, I feel that this town and its residents would welcome an olive oil store. So as you might have figured out here, what we're stumbling over is the addition of another wine bar in our downtown area. So that's one of the things that we're stumbling over. But what I'm asking you to tell us is, what is your point of difference in terms of just the wine sales? We have several artisan wine bars. We even have, as I recall, artisan wine beer dispenser or something that's going up similar to it. So I'm just trying to figure out what your point of difference is.
The difference of having the educational tasting room is really to show the application of our retail products, which is the real revenue driver behind the model. It's all about the food, and people like to enjoy beverages while eating these foods. And wine and olive oil, they have a permanent place on the dinner table. They've been around for thousands of years, so it's been a natural pairing. I understand the concerns about the wine bar, but the wine percentage, wine only, out of the 35% is about 6 to 10%, depending on location. So it's a very small percentage of it.
Can you clarify that for me? It's a very small percentage of your
the wine of the wine bar sales. So small plates, other beverages, and then on-site consumption for wine, and then also off-sale retail. So there's different segments up there.
And then if we can just go back to your business plan again. So you are, this is not going to be a company-owned store. This is going to be a franchise-operated store. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And all locations are owned by a local in the community.
All right, so and then I have a question for staff with that answer. Are there any further questions for this gentleman? Yes, Commissioner O'Donnell.
The questions that have been asked about the wine bar, we do have some fairly successful wine bars in town. My visualization, listening to you, and I want to see if my visualization is correct, the wine bars we have are fairly large. They do a quite extensive sit-down business with various forms of food, but people, in my experience, people go there and essentially have a form of dinner and try wines, and there are wines they can buy retail. My visualization of your facility. One, it's smaller. Two, the percentage of eating that will be going on in your premises and therefore drinking of wine is also smaller than a typical wine bar. Are you familiar with wine bars as different from what you do? And if so, could you tell me what the difference really is?
You're envisioning it right. The big difference is it's about education and generating the knowledge about a specific wine. And my always example is, say we're coming to a We Olive and Wine Bar, and you're looking to, enjoy some olive oils, maybe get a housewarming gift. You're going to pick an olive oil out, maybe some balsamic, and purchase a bottle of wine to give as that gift. Well, this way, in our wine tasting room, you can buy a taste, and then our acting somm, or someone that's educated about the wine, which they all are, is conveying the lifestyle of that grower. They can speak to the wine now, since they know about the producer, the style, and what foods that they are used with to enhance the dishes so they can enjoy their friends. So when you're giving it as a gift, you're knowledgeable about it, unlike a lot of these other wine bars where you're just sitting there and consuming. It's more of an educational experience, and that's why we call We Olive culinary experience, because it's much more than just the wine. But the bites are very small. It's meant to just snack on and enjoy on your way. The main focus is retail gourmet foods.
Commissioner Talasfor.
Oh, quick follow-up. So do you have a price point for your olive oils that you could share with us?
Yes, so we really encourage our guests, we don't use words like customers, to afford to cook with really high quality olive oil. So we have a bulk program, and so we charge guests by the ounce. So we're a really green friendly company. We encourage people to bring in their own bottles, or they can purchase one of ours, and then we just charge them by ounce. Or they can support the local artisan producers that are on the olive oil tasting bar, which have a higher retail, but people really love doing that because it's great for a gift, or it's...
Thank you. And how many olive oils do you usually offer?
We'll have about 21 artisan bottles, and then about 6 extra virgins that are private labeled We Olive.
Okay, thank you.
I just have one franchise follow-up question for you, and that is, is Mr. Bangenberg your franchisee?
That is correct.
Okay. And then does he have a protected geographical area? And that's just a follow-up to one of the other questions about where else you would be opening.
Yes, that he actually has the whole Santa Clara County, so it's all protected.
All right.
Good question.
That was my question. Thank you.
And I just wanted to mention one last comment, is that the wine bar, it only opens around 12, and we don't have late hours. So I think that's, people aren't coming there to, drink or anything. It's really just a complement the retail experience.
All right, thank you. Thank you. You can be seated. I'd now like to call Brian, and is it Bachman?
Good evening, Brian Bachman. I'm at 235 Portola Drive in San Mateo, California. I have been employed by the owners of the building for about the last 9 months or so to find a tenant to take over their business location and the sushi space. The space, as you've all been to it, you know that it's not formula in any way. It's cut up. It's got a courtyard in the middle. It's got a annex building in the back. It's got front access, back access. It's very difficult to, if I was to call the gap about this building, they just wouldn't know what to do with it. It doesn't fit in any one of their prototype formats, if you will. So to find a tenant that would be able to be successful in this building is very difficult. When we came across the We Olive team, we were really excited in that they embraced all the awkward features of the building, from the fact that it's old, it's got some character, it's unique, and they liked that. and for that reason, we really pursued them as much as they pursued us. The other experience I've had with We Olive is once when we came across them through their broker, and part of my job was to go visit We Olive and report back to the owners, what does this business look like? Is it someone that we'd want to be in business with for a long time as a tenant-landlord relationship? And I went to La Jolla to visit it with my family. I was on a vacation, and we checked into our hotel. My wife and daughter went for a little walk downtown, for a little stroll, and she didn't know that I was planning on visiting this store on Prospect Avenue as just kind of one of my own little side agendas. And my son and I were checking in, getting ourselves all situated, and they were going to go do some shopping. And she calls me on my cell phone and says, "Well, I'm at this really cute little olive place down the street. You need to come and check it out." I'm like, "Well, what's it called?" We Olive. Like, "Oh, great, I'll be right there." And so they're in there. My son he's 15, so he couldn't go in the wine area. But my wife has a couple little glasses, and she's tasting wine, and she's tasting some olive oil with the little bread things. And she walked out with 2 olive oil things, one for my sister-in-law who has a heart issue, and they have a olive oil that tastes like butter, and so she got that for her sister as a gift. And then she also bought 2 bottles of wine, she bought them because she knew they taste the way she loves her wines to taste. So the tasting component was really important. I think she spent more money on olive oil than wine, actually. And I walked away thinking, this is a great, great tenant for this building. I believe that they'll be successful there, and it's nice. And would like to ask for your support in promoting them.
Thank you, Mr. Bachman. Any questions? Seeing none, you can have a seat. Right. And I am now going to call Robert, and is it Beliveau? Thank you, sir. Please step forward. Give us your name and address for the record, and then you have 3 minutes.
Okay, my name is Bob Beliveau, of Robert Beliveau. I live on 1596 Shirley Ave in Los Altos. And I'm here with my wife, whose family owns the property at 112 North Santa Cruz. They asked me to speak on their behalf. We really believe that We Olive fits the character of Los Gatos. I want to urge the commission to recommend approving the conditional use permit. I've lived in Los Gatos for almost 10 years, and I met my wife at Maria's here in town. Our own family has lived in the town as well for over 20 years. We know and love the special character of Los Gatos and appreciate the work you do to keeping it an attractive place to live, work, and play. We all believe, and my family too, when I talk to them about it, they think it's such a great idea that having a We Olive at this location is really going to would be a fantastic thing. As to the issue of formally retail, we're not, as you've heard, and I think you're envisioning it, it's not some mass-produced retail cookie-cutter thing that you see everywhere. It's going to be a very special place. If you look on the website, you see their different sites. They all have very different looks and feels to them, all very unique, and they really blend in to the different towns that you see. And I also want to echo what Mr. Bachman said earlier. It was very challenging to find a tenant. We've been looking for like 3 years. He's our second realtor. We've tried many different things, but having that courtyard in the back, that greenscape is a unique feature, and it makes it very difficult for us to find just a pure retail business. So combining these two and having something that matches pretty well with what the existing, or the uses were 2 months ago when Sushi was there and Maria's was there, really seemed like a perfect fit and really matching what we had before. Okay. So I just really, everybody that we've spoken to, our friends, our families, really just think, I was getting hungry listening to these guys talk about what they're doing, and I want to go have a nice dinner with my wife afterwards. This is really, I just think it's a fantastic thing. You couldn't find a better business for this spot. These are quality guys here. Their business just, it seems fantastic, so I hope you support them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, sir, you can have a seat. And then, Mr. Bangenborg, you are permitted to address us for 3 more minutes if you want to bring up anything that you might have forgotten or you'd like to remind us of before we close the public hearing.
I understand the concerns about the alcohol use in our concept, and I'd like to address that some more. Josh spoke very eloquently about it already. I'd like to emphasize that this is meant as an educational experience for people. The first purpose of the restaurant part is to introduce people to our retail products that we sell in the front. The addition of the wine is to complement this and to have something nice to drink with it, and also to be very educational about the wine experience, like Josh explained. Our wine selection in La Jolla currently and in Thousand Oaks are very eloquent and eclectic. It's not any wine you can find at Costco or Safeway or Bevmo. They're very they're handpicked by the staff with very knowledgeable people that help us with the selection of the wine list, and we rotate wines out and again try to keep it as local as possible. That's all I have to share.
I just have a quick question
Sure.
for you. Are you going to be the on-site owner-operator?
Yes,
In
ma'am.
other words, you intend to be there every day or et cetera? I wasn't sure if you're looking for expansion opportunities, so you're going to be hiring people to run this store, or you intend to be there?
With our opening hours, I would need to hire another manager that could be there. But the times I cannot be there, but yes, it's my intention to be there.
So hands-on is what I'm asking.
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Commissioner Telesfor?
Thank you. Could you remind me again, this We Olive is the second one with the wine portion of it?
The original store is in La Jolla, California, and has expanded right now to Thousand Oaks.
I understand that, but is the wine portion in all of your We Olive stores? Is that what?
Yes. So La Jolla, Thousand Oaks, and Costa Mesa are the 3 locations that have a wine bar currently.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Erickson, were you? No. All right, thank you. All right, so you can have a seat, and I will now close the public portion of the public hearing and ask if any commissioners have questions of staff, want to make a comment on the application, or want to introduce a motion for consideration by the commission. And perhaps we should just take that in order. Are there any further questions of staff? Commissioner Telesfor.
I didn't see it in the conditions, but I would assume that there's a fire occupancy permit or level at which this building and business would be subjected to?
Pursuant to building code, there is an occupancy for the site. We do not enter those into conditions of approval.
Oh, you do not do that? Okay, thank you.
So, Ms. Mosley, I have just a few questions for you. One, I would ask you to please clarify the issue of formula retail and franchise operations. And I know I sent you a note asking that. Maybe it's you, Mr. Paulson, but whoever wants to answer that question, just so that the commissioners are clear what we're looking at here.
How about, Joel, do you want to pull up the town code and for the formula retail? And we can go on to your second question and come
Yes,
back to, so we can read the
yes,
actual language. And
Yes,
I
the
think that'll get to
applicant
it.
mentioned cooking classes, and because I did not see that anywhere in the material, I want to be very clear, if we were to approve this evening, where we're going to either allow or disallow or address the issue of the applicant's intent to have cooking classes.
The cooking classes and tasting items were discussed by the applicant at various points. Staff, at the last revision of the letter of justification and based on staff's concerns regarding parking, the applicant had removed that element from their proposal, which is why you don't see it in your conditions. So it is a surprise to staff that that's something they are intending on including again.
I'd just add that as the commission makes their recommendation, if that's something that they feel is appropriate, they've placed limits on themselves through verbal testimony that they don't plan to have more than 2 and not more than 20, and that the rest of the business would be closed for that portion, which would fall into the parking. So if that's something that the commission was interested in, then they could add that to their recommendation as far as appropriate for the use for this site as it goes to the council.
Then, Mr. Paulson, I understood that the 20 people 2 times a month was more for the group wine tastings versus cooking classes. I made a distinction between having an event, which would be a wine tasting or even an olive oil tasting, closing the store, versus holding a cooking class.
As far as the distinction between, so the Meet the Growers events, as described in their letter, as well as relayed to staff, would be strictly related to olive oil producers and would be offered, would not be an invited event kind of thing. It would be an extension where they would encourage people that are already, they'd advertise it kind of like similar to a sale, and they would encourage those that are already there looking at their retail products to go and enjoy that experience or that educational experience. As far as the classes, that was something that was discussed separately. We did discuss the potential of that they may be able to offer classes if they were to close the entire, the rest of the operation. At the time that we discussed it, they weren't comfortable with that, and so that was removed from the proposal at that time.
So what is staff's guidance to the commissioners? What we're saying is that, or what you are saying, I just want to be clear of what the direction is in terms of our parameters of a decision tonight, including that or not including it as a condition of approval.
As discussed by the applicant, as long as it would be closed to, as long as the rest of the business would be closed, it would meet parking requirements based on a approximate 20% invitee list limitation. So that would meet the intent of what staff would have considered at the, as far as a potential. We'd have to look at including a verbiage for a condition, forwarding that to council. But as far as the Meet the Growers events, staff considered that an extension of the retail operation and did not have concern in regards to that.
So my follow-up question to you is, if they charge for this event, is that a different condition of approval, or is that a different parameter versus if you can just sign up because you want to have an education from X wine grower?
So for the classes and those events where they would be closed to the general public, staff would not have an issue with them charging for those. As far as the Meet the Growers events, that should be open to the public as a whole, and there should be no charge for those as far as staff considers.
Thank you, Ms. Mosley. Now, Mr. Paulson, you're going to say something about, okay, Ms. Mosley?
Town code defines formula retail business as a retail business which, along with 7 or more other business locations, is required by contractual or other arrangement to maintain any of the following: standardized merchandise, services, decor, uniforms, architecture, colors, signs, or other similar features. Staff believes this proposal, while they would have unique aspects, would fall under that category.
Contractually?
Correct.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Commissioner O'Donnell.
I don't think there's anything in the record at all about which would support standardized or not standardized. Nobody asked the question. So, and nobody knew to ask the question. So I guess if this is going to go off on whether the franchisor runs a McDonald's where they all wear the same uniform and use the same food and that kind of thing, we don't have enough information. And so I guess getting this information after we close the hearing is a little difficult because I was not persuaded on what I heard that this was a franchise store under that definition, but I don't know what their franchise agreement says. So either we reopen to ask the applicant and or the franchisor what the agreement is, if we're going to find an exception, or we're going to be kind of hamstrung.
Commissioner Talasfore, you had a question?
I did too. It's somewhat different, and I just wanted to close the loop on this, but this would be a new business on that parking lot, as far as that now we've introduced alcohol, and there are neighbors on University, and I just wanted to make sure that they had all been noticed. Is that correct?
Everyone within 300 feet of the property was noticed.
Is University 300 feet of this property?
There are some properties on University that are within 300 feet, correct?
Homes.
Correct.
Thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell, yes.
Consider reopening so we can address the issue of whether it's standardization kind of thing of the franchise agreement?
I think that's acceptable, Commissioner O'Donnell, and is there a lack of precedent for that, or?
You certainly can do that. I'm not sure it matters whether it's standardized or not. It still, in staff's mind, still falls under the guidelines of formal retail.
Well, with all due respect to staff's mind, the language that I heard, and perhaps council can explain to me why standardization is not relevant when it said that. I mean, if I heard the language, and you live with it, I don't, it talked about standardized practices and required by an agreement, none of which we have evidence on. Now, if that doesn't mean anything to you, I'd appreciate you explaining to me how you get around the language.
Well, I think the beginning is along with 7 or more other business locations, it's along with that is required also. If they were named something else, it wasn't We Olive, part of something that has a number of other businesses in that location of that name, then we would not consider it. Any business that comes forward historically that we have had that has more than 7 locations has been considered a formula retail.
No, but it's any of the following. I think you could reach that conclusion just by the name, the colors, the shirt that's being worn, but you can reopen it to find that out.
Well, why don't we do that, Commissioner O'Donnell, and then we can bring this to rest. So, Mr. Bangenborg, we're going to ask you to step forward again if you could, and we are going to, perhaps, Commissioner O'Donnell, would you like to ask the specific question?
Sure. Can I have the code section, please? Just one moment.
And just for your edification, so part of what we're considering tonight is approving a formula retail store.
Understood.
And so what Commissioner O'Donnell is trying to ascertain is how formula is formula, for lack of a better explanation.
Yes, ma'am.
Find it. Could you? Oh, here it is. I found it. Thank you very much. Okay, so I want to ask you some questions relating to our definition of a formula retail business. Now, we know that the franchisor has 11, give or take, but I understand 11 franchise operations. It says that those are required by contractual or other arrangements to maintain any of the following: standardized merchandise. Are you required to maintain any particular merchandise other than generic olive oil?
It's my understanding from the contract that I can purchase olive oil from any approved olive oil producer.
Are you required to decorate the store in any particular fashion?
In my own exploration of the We Olive brand, I've visited most of the olive oil stores in business, and I can attest that they're very different from each other. There are some guidelines on how to make the store look nice and sort of get the feel that the brand wants to portray, but there is no language in the contract that I'm aware of that states that every store needs to look the same.
Are your employees required to wear a uniform that is set by the franchisor?
I'm not aware.
You signed the agreement with your franchisor?
Yes, ma'am.
And you don't recall such an agreement?
I don't recall any language around clothing.
Are you required to employ a certain architecture for your property?
No, sir. I select my own architect.
Are you required to use certain colors for your property?
I'm not aware of having to use any certain colors.
Are you required to use any specific signs for your property?
there is a We Olive brand that we saw in the video that obviously the chain would like to maintain.
That's a name. I'm wondering if a specific formula of a sign, a trade dress, might be the language used.
I understand. As long as I keep the logo as is, I can do whatever sign I'd like.
Not sure I saw the logo. What is the logo?
It's on my shirt, actually. Thank you.
That's the company logo?
It is.
Okay. Okay, so those are the questions I would ask out of this, and if there's any follow-up.
Commissioner Erickson.
So in the early part of Commissioner O'Donnell's running you through a series of questions, you answered a question that you're required to purchase from approved olive oil producers. Who approves those? Does the list of approved olive oil producers does the approval come from We Olive, I guess is the question? Or is it approved by the, California olive oil?
I'll defer to Frank on how the selection process happens.
No, I think you were leading in that direction. All it needs is that it needs to be approved by the California Olive Oil Council. It needs to be deemed as certified extra virgin, and that's the only criteria.
So just to be clear, it's not from an approved list of We Olive
The criteria
producers.
is if it's a certified olive oil by the COOC.
Commissioner Telesfor.
Follow up to that. So if we had a local olive oil producer in our area, they would be open to be in your store?
As long as they're approved by the COOC.
And then just one more, and it's about the signage, and it's really about posters or your signage for your store. And I think it said you had a poster or you have whatever, but logo, you have a logo.
A logo.
I understand that. One of the things about our downtown that we're really try to enforce, I guess, is to have windows that don't just have posters slapped up against the window.
Okay.
Because that doesn't actually encourage people to come in, and it doesn't say small town. So that would just be something I would like to let you know about, or I don't know how you plan on doing your window.
No, I don't like posters in the window either. So.
Thank you very much.
All right. So, sir, you can, Commissioner Erickson.
I just have one question since we reopened it on another. So my fellow commissioner, someone were talking about the cooking classes in Building B. So let me be sure. I mean, this is why I didn't have a question about it. The drawings don't suggest to me, Building B, that there's any cooking equipment in them. So I took that as it would be not cooking classes that would involve the preparation of food, that it would just be, like to a dummy like me, like you would put this with this, and you might talk about recipes, but there would not be, in the conventional way of thinking about a cooking class where there was, that you might see on Food Network, where they were, where Bobby Flay or someone like that was preparing the food for you to do that. So I didn't make a distinction between a cooking class and any other kind of educational event that you would have about wine or about anything else. Right. Is that a
correct? So
correct characterization?
There will not be any kitchen equipment or open flames or anything.
Okay, so it's not. It's an educational event. Not a cooking class that Sir Latab in town here might do that has a full-blown kitchen, as an example.
Exactly.
Okay.
Then just a follow-up question to that. Each time you have a cooking class or an educational class, those would take place when the store was closed. It would close early, correct?
Yes, the intent is 6 p.m.
All right. And then, as I understand, your sense at this time is that they would be limited to 20 people, and you would hold them 1 to 2 times a month.
At most.
Okay. All right. I think that's it for real this time.
Thank you.
Okay. And so now I'm going to reclose the public portion of the public hearing and ask if any commissioners have further questions of staff or want to make a comment on the application or want to introduce a motion. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I have what may be an obvious comment to make. I'm enthused by this application. Personally, I think the formula retail is a good rule to have, but I have to tell you that when I think of formula retail, I don't think of this kind of operation. But if I did, I would still think there are exceptions to formula retail, which I believe this application would satisfy. But I do think, having read the statute and asked the questions which would be needed to support the statute, I'm just amazed the staff could come up with an opinion without apparently having any facts to justify it. So anyway, but now the record, I think, has a lot of facts on it, which do not support that. So one, I think it's a very unique operation. It's not like people are lined up to open olive stores in town. So, and two, I think it is something that could be very good for Los Gatos. I think three, the sale of incidental use of wine would help support that good thing, and the percentages we've heard are reasonable percentages. As far as the classes are concerned, Commissioner Erickson's question, I think, is right on, and I don't think we have to worry about cooking classes, and we can so limit it, I think. And as far as that is concerned, Ms. Mosley suggested some conditions would have to be fleshed out to support that. But I would not be in favor of limiting the applicant because of this apparent change of position. They didn't put in their application what they're now telling us they think they'd like to have. Because I think what they've asked for this evening, again, is not only reasonable, but I'd like to see them succeed. I'm sure we always want to see a business succeed, and I think those things are necessary. So I just wanted to say that and look to my fellow commissioners, because there may be some of you who correctly think that I'm wrong on the formula or any other reason, and I'd like to hear that before we vote.
Commissioner Erickson.
So I have a question for staff, and then depending upon what the answer is, I'll be quiet, or I'll offer my own comments to respond to Commissioner O'Donnell's invitation. So my question is, do we have a precedent, this is a question to staff, do we have a precedent in town where we have classified a business as not a formula retail, where there have been 7 or more, they've had used the same name, where they dictated, where the name is dictated to them and the logo is dictated to them? Do we have a precedent where, when you have those conditions, because there are lots of franchises that allow some local discretion. So just the question is, do we have a precedent when you have those conditions where we've termed it as non-formula retail?
Staff isn't aware of any. That doesn't mean that there aren't any. And we also have some formula retail businesses that predate our regulations. So to staff's knowledge, no, but that is information that we can definitely supply to council should this be moving forward one way or the other.
Right. So I'm happy to respond to Commissioner O'Donnell's invitation at the pleasure of the chair then. So my sense of the situation is this. It's a business which responds very positively to policy LU92, which says, in part, maintain a variety of commercial uses, including a strong downtown commercial area, blah, 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 blah. And then goal LU10 preserves downtown Los Gatos as the historic center of the town with goods and services for local residents while maintaining the existing town identity, environment, and, I'll emphasize, commercial viability. So it responds very positively to that. So it meets those kind of things. To me, it is a really good business. Here's my disappointment or my concern. It's not clear to me that it's a formula retail or not. That's not completely clear to me. I could be informed better if I understood what the precedents were, because ones have been approved or not been approved by the council. For the moment, let's assume that it is a formula retail. So then, and then let's assume that it is a bar, because there's no such thing as a wine bar in this town. So I'm either a bar, a restaurant, or a restaurant with a separate bar. Those are the only things that are provided for in the alcohol beverage policy of the town. So my frustration with the thing, so I think the staff, in effect, made the correct recommendation to the commission based on those interpretations, which I would think is the wrong answer. But I think where we are is we continue to have an outdated alcohol beverage policy that this commission has asked for more than 3 or 4 years to have updated. And I would read from the alcohol beverage policy, the reason we have regulations that limit alcohol beverage policy is captured in the very first paragraph of the purpose of it. The consumption service of alcoholic beverages, if not regulated, can jeopardize public safety, result in increase of calls for public services, and compromise the quality of life for town residents. This policy provides parameters for alcohol beverage service, particularly addressing late night service when alcohol-related incidents are most likely to occur and when the disturbances to town residents is least tolerable. So the policy, and it goes further in section 2. So section 2.1 says the town shall continue to strongly discourage new applications for standalone bars or restaurants with separate bars. We don't have a definition of a wine bar, so we continue to have an outmoded alcohol beverage policy that is not responsive to current market conditions. We have an emergence, and we've continued to not have a policy. So we would, if we abide by the policy, we would have no option other than to deny this, because we've had clear direction from the council that we're strongly discouraged from adding bars, and we can't classify this as a restaurant with meal service. We couldn't even classify it as a restaurant with a separate bar. Then we also have clear guidance. So my second part of frustration is we have clear guidance from the council in 2021 not to replace, to substitute formula retail. But as I've mentioned before, what that does, it assumes at some magic moment in history that we had the perfect balance in town, and we have no guidance from the council about what the perfect balance in town would be and how that might change over history as retail, the nature of retail changes. So I think my interpretation would be if we consider it formula retail, and we don't have any other guidance from the council, we have to carry out the council's wishes and deny this application and acknowledge that the staff made the absolute correct recommendation.
Commissioner O'Donnell?
I just chuckle because I'm the lawyer, and he's adopting what I think is a very legally sound position, which I don't support. He raises two main issues, and I'll deal with the second one first. The second one is formula retail. One, I don't think this is a formula retail within the. One thing about the language of statutes is we have what is called gloss. You have to determine the intention of the maker, and I cannot believe that the intention of this maker would be to find this kind of store formula retail. Now, the one way we can find that out is to decide it's not a formula retail. This is a recommendation to the council. They'll tell us if we're wrong. So that's one. I think that's, and secondly, I think there's some precedent that we've allowed formula retail in this town when we make the finding that if we don't let this in, there's nothing going to, well, when Joseph Banks came in. Joseph Banks was formula retail. We allowed that to come in, notwithstanding that, because there was no other men's store in town. Now, I don't know any other olive store in town, So, I mean, there are ways around this, even if you believe it's formula retail, which I don't. So I think we can deal with Commissioner Erickson's concern, a good concern, over the formula retail issue. The other one that's more difficult is the alcohol policy. I believe, number one, there will be no wine. Well, I believe the food is always available for the tasting of wine. They go together, and that's what they're doing here. I can't remember the last time we turned down the approval of a bar or for a restaurant, i.e. the service of food, so I shouldn't say a bar, because the person could go in there and have dinner. Now, notwithstanding that sometimes people don't even stay for dinner, we have not turned one of those down in the memory of man runneth not. In this case, we have minor drinking of wine with food available and olive oil on that. If we are forced to believe that somehow violates the town policy, then I agree with Commissioner Erickson, something needs to be done with it. Again, we can find out whether the council believes that to be the case by sending it up to them saying, we don't think this violates the intention of the policy because of the reasons that Commissioner Erickson read. I mean, the whole purpose of that doesn't get offended by this. Now, you could easily disagree with that, but I'm just saying I don't see the problem of helping the town council to clarify this by sending them up 2 points on this. One, the formula retail thing, and two, the alcohol on a situation like this to determine that whether that is their intention. If it is, then they'll have to ask themselves whether they want to do something about that or whether it really is their intention. So notwithstanding the good points that Commissioner Erickson raised, I personally will still support the application.
Commissioner Sayak.
Okay, if I may, I think I'll introduce a motion just to see if we can see if there are any commonalities that we may be able to agree on. Understanding and listening to all the information here, I think that the process serves its purpose in that there are specific policies and guidance that staff needs to follow. And as Commissioner Erickson had pointed out, if you do follow it in a there's a legal interpretation that they followed, and with that came a recommendation. That recommendation comes to us, we have this hearing, and more information comes out, and we as a deciding body interpret that information presented tonight to make our recommendation. So that being said, I'm going to take a different approach now and look at the findings that we need to make and the findings that I found based on what was presented tonight for granting the CUP. And with that, it's the CUP, and I'm going to look at Exhibit 2, and we can walk through it. It's 2920.190 that grants the CUP, and there are 4 elements there. And it talks about proposed use of the property is essential and desirable. It will not impair the integrity and character of the zone. It would not be detrimental, and it's in harmony. And based on the record tonight, I think there are specific findings that show it's desirable to public health, public convenience, public welfare, as well as the integrity of the zone, in that we don't have any competing interests. And then if you jump down and you look at the reasons for denying a CUP based on formula retail, and I'm not going to even characterize whether or not it's formula retail or not, there's specific findings that we need to make. And one is looking at the existing balance and diversity and overconcentration. There is no overconcentration of olive oil businesses in town. There is, it will not disrupt the diversity of business. Now, what another ordinance we need to look at is Ordinance 2021, and it's to discourage displacement of retail uses by restaurant uses. I don't believe, based on what was presented tonight, this is a restaurant. And I understand within the alcohol beverage policy, again, there's different characterizations, but I do not believe, based on what I heard tonight, that it's a bar either. It was very clear, and again, it's a difference in interpretation, but I think there was a term that was presented, and we could even put it into the CUP, but it's education-centric wine and food service that they use to help promote their retail. And in tonight's findings, we found that 65% of their revenue is retail. And so based on what I heard tonight, I feel very comfortable in allowing a retail store to move forward with the services that they are providing that enhances that retail. So based on that, I would make a motion to forward to council a recommendation of approval, understanding the concerns that staff and other commissioners have presented tonight.
Is there a second to that? Commissioner Talasfor.
Thank you. I will second that. I'd like to refer back to the meeting on Monday night of the council where they talked a lot about 2021 and the wording of discourage. And I think it was very clear to me from what I heard from all of the council members that their definition of discourage did not include prohibit or exempt in any way. So they didn't interpret the discourage part as a business would be prohibited. In thinking about this formula retail store, I have to say that I think it is unique enough that an exception could be found. Now, we can't really apply that exception, but we're making a recommendation tonight. And so my recommendation would be somewhat like the motion, and that is that the council find an exception. Consumers have been enamored. I want to make a broad statement about consumers. The way we shop today, what our interests are, has changed rapidly. And consumers are interested in that artisan, hand-worked kind of product. Stores are continually having to reinvent themselves as to get their customers in and give them experiences that they wouldn't have in other places. The way this business is seemed to be setting up, it looks like it's accomplishing everything. And also it's a healthy alternative to oils. I would really support this as another taste adventure more than a wine adventure for our residents. So I will support it.
Commissioner Erickson.
So, Madam Chair, may I ask the town attorney a question?
Please.
So in Commissioner Sayok's motion, she made up her own term to describe the type of establishment which will be serving and selling alcoholic beverages. So does the commission have the discretion to create its own category of alcoholic beverage service that is not provided for by the alcohol beverage policy adopted by the town council?
No.
So a follow-up question, Madam Chair. So then it's either a bar, the only three kinds we have is a bar, a restaurant, or a restaurant with a separate bar. Is that correct?
That's my understanding, the three.
So it has to be one of those three. It can't be a wine bar, and it can't be an educational wine tasting place.
Certainly are making only recommendations to council, and you can make that recommendation for them to find the exemption, as was mentioned by the other commissioner.
Yeah. So I have a follow-up comment. Here's my concern, both to Commissioner Sayok and to Commissioner O'Donnell. We've been 4 years approving something called wine bars, which don't exist in this town by the guidelines we've given and they've been passing them. So rather than changing the policy and getting that done, which doesn't seem to me like a very hard exercise to do, but it's taken us a really long time to do that, we continue to send things forward and everybody says, oh, well, we'll just deal with this one thing without changing what provides guidance to people who are coming who are paying fees, who are trying to get licenses and are trying to get that. So we're making it hard for them because we aren't doing what we should be doing to change the policy to contemporize it. That's my issue. It's not, because I would be more enthusiastic, it would be hard to find a commissioner here who would be more enthusiastic about this business joining the town. But my concern is we continue to not have the policies or the direction from the council to get the clarification about the alcohol beverage policy, or a real clarification about when we are to discourage or encourage any criteria when we should use to discourage formula retail.
I would like to do something myself, and that is to ask the maker of the motion and the seconder of the motion to consider including specific language about these classes in the motion so that we add them to the conditions of approval. And I would suggest something along the lines of educational classes, which are to be conducted when the store is closed, are to be limited to 20 people, no more than twice a month, whether a cost is charged or not. And so that is one topic. And then the second comment that I want to make that I don't think is clear in terms of bar or no bar. In this situation, food is not required to be served with wine service. There's 3 categories of serving wine. There's the tasting, there's the half glass, there's the full glass, and I guess there's the retail. So that's 4 levels. But food is not required to be served with the wine. It is going to be offered, but it does not have to be purchased by a patron. And I do think that that goes into our consideration of bar, no bar, alcohol service with or without food, because in other situations where wine bars have been approved under whatever exception, however we describe the animal, we did require that food be served with that wine. And in this situation, we are not.
Available.
I think it was more that they ordered food with their wine. No?
Well, we can turn.
Well, it's okay. It's all right. I mean, we can, Ms. Mosley.
The condition that is included is the same condition that was included on Donostia, I can never pronounce their name, as well as Enoteca Astoria. I do not recall Rootstock's condition, but the most recent wine bars that have been approved by council, that was the language that was included.
Which was the language?
As far as that food service be available during all hours.
Then I stand corrected with that. So thank you for that clarification. And now can we go back to the maker of the motion and the seconder?
Yes, so I will include, and if staff can prepare the verbiage that would go forward to town council, that would be great. I want to make a quick comment. We make decisions and we pass forward information based on what is submitted. I want to make it clear on the record that the applicant himself clarified he did not think of himself as a wine bar. So I did not make up anything on the fly, and that it was in his letter of justification that he said it was education-centric food and service. So there's a difference in opinion. This is a valid example that should be brought to town council, because ultimately they will be the ones interpreting what will be considered a bar versus non-bar and how to follow the policy. But I want that clear, that there is a difference in opinion of definition. And based on what was submitted today, this is the recommendation I'm sending forward.
Right. So I'm actually going to, yes, are you accepting it?
And I would accept that. I would also thank you for clarifying that we put that condition in for the limited number of people, because I truly forgot to do that. Thank you. So yes.
And so I'm going to make a more general comment, and that is, had this been just about olive oil, we would have been probably in and out of here in 15 minutes, because I personally do not see this as displacing retail, because the business is so retail. I mean, the purpose is to sell the olive oil. It's not, or the olives or the food products. So that to me is retail. However, we have added a component of alcohol, and so this is why you are listening up here to these many different, and I don't think it's anyone's opinion that we don't want the store. What the issue is the alcohol service. So I just want to be clear about that. I would welcome your store, and I am going to this evening support the motion when it does come up for a vote. So that's my statement. Anyone else? Commissioner Birch.
I just wanted to say I'm also going to support the motion. I think that this is going to be a great addition to the town. It's unique. It's something that nobody has done. I think something else I'm looking forward to is because it's going to be unique to our town, we're going to see people from other towns come into Los Gatos to experience this and therefore hopefully enjoy more of Los Gatos. So I will support the motion.
I'm going to make one more comment before you, Commissioner Erickson, and I want to thank you for the comments that you have made this evening, because your comments really reflect what all of us up here are. I think I can speak for all of us to say this has been a very frustrating experience in terms of the alcohol policy, and we do need to, the council needs to do something about this wine bar. I suspect this is not going to be the last time we're going to see this issue before us. So thank you for those comments, Commissioner Erickson. And you wanted to speak, yes.
So I'll be supporting the motion. I think my opinions will be part of the record that will be transmitted to the town council, and hopefully they were clear. But I will support the motion because in general I think it's a good business, but more importantly that I support Commissioner O'Donnell's logic. We'll send it to the town council, and maybe this time, rather than taking it as a one-off, they'll take the opportunity to clarify the policies and the directions that they provide to the Planning Commission.
Thank you, Commissioner Erickson. Now let's have a vote, shall we? All in favor of the motion? Aye. Passes unanimously. Welcome, We Olive, Los Gatos. Thank you.
Oh, wait, we're just a recommendation. It has, you have another level to go to. Yeah.
Okay, Mr. Paulson, because we're recommending this to the town council, there is no further appeal on this part, right?
That's correct.
All right, thank you. We are going to take a 5-minute, let's say 7-minute break, and then we will reconvene to hear item number 2. Thank you. Of the Planning Commission on, I forgot the date, April 23rd, 2014, sorry. All right, so we are going to move on to agenda item number 2, which is an application requesting approval to operate a quality restaurant at 55 Los Gatos Saratoga Road, the Los Gatos Motor Inn, with separate bar and full alcohol service on property zoned CHPD, APN number 529-23007, Conditional Use Permit Application U13018. May I have a show of hands from the commissioners who have visited the property? Are there any disclosures by any commissioner? Ms. Avila, I understand you're going to give us the staff report this evening.
The Planning Commission should have received a desk item. There was a letter of support received from the Homeowners Association for the adjacent residential complex, and so hopefully you have that in front of you. This site is located on the northeast corner of Los Gatos Saratoga Road, also known as Highway 9 and Alberto Way. There's a long history to the development on this site. The motel has been there for many years. The applicant came to the town in prior to 2008. In 2008, the town council approved a planned development for the property for renovation of the motel, in addition of a 9,000 square foot commercial building and conversion of some of the existing building to office space. The applicant had some major delays when a water line was hit during the start of construction and went through a long process to remedy that situation. The new retail building eventually got a little bit smaller. It's closer to 8,800 square feet. It was contemplated at the time the plan development was approved that the building would be different. They had the ability to do retail and office and or restaurant uses. So restaurant was contemplated with the original PD approval. There's a maximum of size and number of restaurants that were possible with approval of a subsequent use permit. Ultimately, the new building got completely occupied by a medical office use. So the applicant is now requesting to take the space that was designated for office and to locate a restaurant in that space. So the original office approval was for about 2,300. The proposed restaurant space is about 3,000 square feet, just under 3,000. They're requesting approval for 82 seats. The seats would be distributed amongst the main dining room. There's a few outdoor seats on a patio and a dining bar. There would also be a breakfast room, and that breakfast room is exclusively for motel guests. The restaurant won't be open for breakfast during the week, but motel guests can get breakfast in that breakfast room. The restaurant would be open for brunch on weekends, and so that would be a part of their regular operation. The new commercial building is occupied by Satellite Healthcare, which is a dialysis center. The former Los Gatos Motor Inn is now called Inn of Los Gatos, and their number of rooms has decreased from the original approval. It was 60 rooms, and it's now in the low 50s. They've combined a few into suites. They've added a fitness center, and they've made some adjustments to their floor plans. The applicant has indicated that the room count may go down a little bit further, but right now we're working on about 52. And they may speak to that a little bit when they speak. The restaurant would be located at the west end of the building, and the floor plans were provided for the proposed layout. The unusual aspect of the application is we have a shared parking concept. The shared parking arrangement was something that was discussed and approved with the plan development, and the applicant is wanting to continue the shared parking arrangement. So the parking study was updated, and that is attached to your staff report. The study was done by the town's traffic consultant, TJKM, and they did study actual uses that are similar, other small motels. They looked at some other satellite healthcare locations because the current one wasn't yet open, and came to the conclusion that the shared parking can work to support the site with the proposed 82 seats. I think they originally looked at a little bit slightly higher number of 95. There were two components of the proposal related to the town's alcoholic beverage policy. One is the request to serve alcohol after 10 o'clock, and the other is that they have what looks to be a separate bar. The applicant doesn't intend to operate it as a bar where people just come in and drink. It is intended to be a dining bar where people could sit down and have a meal, and you could order alcoholic beverages if you chose. That concludes staff's report, and if you have any questions, I'm available to answer them.
Thank you, Ms. Avila. Are there any questions of staff? Commissioner Erickson?
I have a question about the drawings, just to be sure I'm understanding correctly. So there's on sheet A1, let me find it first. There appear to be 3 rooms that are part of the hotel's business before the, quote, hotel sleeping rooms that are, what would it be, west of, in between the restaurant area and the hotel rooms. Is that correct? I think there's 3 rooms in between the hotel sleeping rooms and the restaurant. On the drawing for the restaurant, there are only 2 rooms. So I was trying to understand, is the 3rd room on that drawing the private dining room, or so there's 2 rooms of, quote, hotel services, on that drawing as opposed to 3 on drawing A1?
The floor plan is what they would like to have. And so I think this is the accurate one. The site plan was on there to show the location of the motel on the site as a whole and for informational reasons. It does look like they had a room there originally, and it's been modified.
And I would say that, and hopefully the applicant can clarify this, but on A1, it's hard to read the room closest to the restaurant, but I think it says new breakfast room, which
Right.
I think is intended to double as this private dining room on the floor plan sheet. But we would want to confirm that with the applicant when they come up.
Okay, because I took it that the hotel breakfast room was something different than the private dining room, but if it's the same room, then...
We don't believe so,
I
but
believe
we
they're
would
the
want
same room.
them to
Okay.
clarify that.
Okay, that's fine.
Any other questions for staff? All right. We're now going to open the public portion of the public hearing and give the applicant an opportunity to address the commission for up to 5 minutes. However, I do not have a card, so I'm not sure who is coming forward. Yes. Mr. John Shank, if you could step forward, pull the microphone toward you, and give us your name and address, and you have 5 minutes to address us. The light will turn yellow when you're down to 30 seconds.
My name is John Shank. Our office address is 14573 Big Basin Way in Saratoga. And honorable commissioners, thank you for hearing us tonight. We really wanted to get right into the fact that staff has denied this request and hit the main items that appeared to us in the summary section. It says staff is recommending denial of the CUP since a separate dining bar area has been proposed and service of alcohol is proposed after 10 p.m. Just want to make it really clear that this separate dining bar area is for, in many cases, individual travelers who don't necessarily, some people may like to sit at a 4-top table alone, but a lot of people like to come in and be able to sit down and have a meal in a little more communal atmosphere. So this is really about food service and an accompanying beverage. As also shown by in the drawing, you'll probably see that there's a pizza oven type of idea or pizza idea, oyster bar, food service. That's the intention of this separate dining bar area. Second item that is about the denial here is about alcohol, which is proposed service after 10 p.m. We ask broadly for hours. If it's something that we need to acquiesce to the Planning Commission or to the town as far as ending alcohol service around 10 p.m., that's something we're certainly open to and wanted to get that out there. Then the denial continues to go on saying the ABP gives the hearing body discretion to approve alcoholic beverage service when the proposal, 1, will not negatively impact residential neighbors, 2, alcohol-related incidents will not occur, and 3, when the application will provide a positive impact to the commercial area. What I'd like to do is cite the desk item I think that you have, which is the letter from our neighbor, our closest neighbor, Pueblo de los Gatos, which I think is 63 units. And I'd like to hit each one of these in order, with the first one being that beverage service when the proposal will not negatively impact residential neighbors. What our neighbor has said about this in their letter is the residents of Pueblo de los Gatos are in overwhelming support of a new quality fine dining restaurant to be located mere steps from our residences at the newly renovated Inn of Los Gatos. It goes on to say, we are excited that there is still an opportunity to provide a restaurant in our neighborhood and believe that the type of restaurant plan would be a great addition. That's what they have to say towards that one. The second one is alcohol-related incidents will not occur. And I'm going to read another excerpt from this. This is from the Pueblo de los Gatos letter. We understand that the current owners will keep tight controls on noise and deliveries since they will have hotel guests occupying the rooms adjacent to the new restaurant. And it is in their best interest in an attempt to be good neighbors as well as provide for an enjoyable guest experience. The hotel is staffed 24/7, so we are confident that the hotel employees will be vigilant and work in conjunction with restaurant management and ensure a peaceful environment. The third section here that's cited is when the application will provide a positive impact to the commercial area. A couple more sections I'd like to read from this letter on that. We have watched as the owners of the motel property have taken a neglected, dilapidated, and somewhat unsafe motel and turned it into an upgraded hotel, which appeals to a new, higher-class clientele and can now better compete with accommodations available at downtown Los Gatos. They also say, since the restaurant is walking distance to our neighborhood, we will now have a food option that will not require us to drive into downtown or Los Gatos Boulevard, which in turn will alleviate traffic in those areas, as well as relieves pressure on parking spaces. The owners of the hotel are here, our architect is here, and we're available to answer any questions you may have. Thank you for your time.
So, Mr. Shank, don't leave, okay?
I'm not
Because
going
we
anywhere.
may have questions. Commissioner O'Donnell.
I have one question on the design of the oyster alcohol service area dining. It looks like one big bar is what it looks like. And I understand the rationale for what you want to do there. And I'm just wondering if it were designed differently, same seating capacity, same everything, but broken up into, rather than one circular bar, whether it would be less like what we're concerned about, i.e. another bar. Because although food is served, we can't make people have food. And we can't put a guard at the door refusing them to leave until they have food. So no matter all the good intentions in the world, it's a bar. And when you've got a big, huge circular bar, the longer the bar is, the more interesting it gets. So I'd just like to get some of your comments on why that particular bar is designed at the size that it is.
This is a little bit of an awkwardly shaped building at this corner here. This used to be the old lobby and the manager's quarters behind it, and it's kind of that kinked L shape. So a little bit, I would say some of it is, that design is just to maximize the flow, pure and simple. I could try to comment more on it, but it's really, we want to be able to have seating over there to be able to utilize that section well.
Well, are those seats representative of how many seats that bar will have?
This drawing is done to scale, so.
Well, I'm just saying, if it's 3, 6, 9, 12, if what that bar will seat is 12 people, are you saying that 4 smaller tables could not seat 12 people?
I'm not saying that, no. But I think that, if your intention is to want to split this up into something,
No, at this point, I'm just trying to understand it.
Yeah.
There's no intention.
I think this is a very inviting environment. We have guests coming in, and I can speak to the room count piece as well if you guys like, because it's actually, we're planning on 48 rooms.
Oh.
And there are some suites in there, but that is what we're planning on. We want to have an inviting environment for our guests. People are coming in, they're being introduced to Los Gatos in some ways by our property that has been upgraded greatly, and we want them to have a welcoming environment and a place that they want to be in. And I think I don't want to make any too broad of statements on this, but I think a lot of individual travelers are probably used to this type of design and feel very welcoming in coming into this kind of environment.
Thank you.
Mr. Shank, I do want to just make one comment to you so that you understand where we are tonight. The CUP runs with the land, and while you will be a very responsible and have been owner or the owners, if you're wildly successful and someone comes along and wants to buy you, we would want you to be successful and to consider that. However, that's why these questions aren't directed to you, they're directed to the use of the land. So just so that you understand that we do not question whether or not this is going to be a quality environment for people, but we do have to ask these kinds of questions and get to the actual use of the land. No matter who owns this property, we need to be sure of what we're approving tonight or not. All right.
Understood.
So, Commissioner Birch.
That being said, and I'm confident you heard the lively discussion on the last item, there are some issues in our alcohol policy for the town that we have to adhere to. And so on a preliminary look at this, the way this is going to appear is that this is a separate room with a separate bar that sometimes food can be served at. I would be very interested if everyone would be willing to take a look at this space perhaps and turn it more into a more casual dining experience aside from the fine dining side. And I'm not an architect, I don't know exactly how to do that, but I think Commissioner O'Donnell was right on when he was saying it's kind of the long continuous bar that gives that impression and that drives some of the decision making. I would be interested to know if that is maybe something that could be worked on to create a little bit more of a casual dining experience for the single traveler rather than have it look like a continual bar.
I think there could be some alternatives designs to this, to where you do keep the aspect where it's inviting to a guest, and it still has that connotation they can a meal and a beverage and be in a community atmosphere. I guess one of our main concerns is that we really hope that we really want a decision to be made tonight, and so the trepidation I have in answering certain things that can be kind of broad is that it would lead to a continuance that would have more study to do with something. And so I think I do, but to answer your question directly, yes, sure. I think there is an alternate design that could accommodate what we're talking about here.
Great, thank you.
Commissioner Erickson.
So could you, because there's not this level of specificity on this drawing, so could you tell me, I get what the bar, I'm going to not use the word bar, the area that you would set your beverages and food on, I get what that looks like, and I get what the chairs look like. Can you describe to me what's in the center of the oval?
What's at the center of the oval? So,
well, let's say if it were, I'm not suggesting that it is, but if it were a bar, it's going to have a whole complement of potentially wine, beer, distilled spirits, mixers, etc. You know what a bar. I mean, I don't know whether you've ever been in a bar or not, but presumably you know what a bar looks like. So, if you would, does it look like that, or will you be delivering the alcoholic beverages from another site to the patrons there? Will this be where your alcoholic beverages are to service the rest of the restaurant? That'll help me understand whether it's a bar or whether it's a type of seating area that accommodates single patrons coming in.
So I'm sure back in the kitchen somewhere there's probably going to be beverages of sorts. That said, this bar, and the reason we've highlighted the pizza oyster piece for the alcohol service area is what we're calling it, is, yeah, there's going to be, the idea around this drawing here is that there would be alcohol right there. And it would be a good place to serve from, yes. But you'll see the pizza oyster piece, and it's not clear totally in these drawings, but you'll see some lines on the left and right. The idea would be that there might be even like the pizza oven or a big pizza warming station would be there. So it's almost like a display area for the food where people would be served there. So that the drink would be gotten, their food would be gotten and delivered to them. And same with like the oyster bar concept. It'd almost be like, I don't quite want to say buffet style, but I mean, it'd be kind of, probably set on a section of there so that it would be, the food would be a very prominent piece of this.
But it is where you're going to house your alcoholic beverages and serve them from to the restaurant.
That's the idea behind this drawing,
okay.
Yes.
In Exhibit 5, number 8, it says that alcoholic beverage service is allowed in the restaurant, dining room, and dining bar and outdoor patio only in conjunction with meal service. So even if this room is called a dining bar, no one can have just alcoholic beverage there. Is that your understanding as well?
My understanding of some of the documentation was that a meal, and this is why we would have it open, a meal would be able to be served to these folks all the way to the end of closing hours. That's how I had understood it. I don't have the section in front of me that you're referencing. I can get to it, I'm sure. I have the package here.
Okay, so Exhibit 5, Condition 8, specifically says the words, "only in conjunction with meal service."
Oh, I see. Okay, so alcoholic beverage service is allowed in the restaurant dining room and dining bar and outdoor patio only in conjunction with meal service. I mean, if that's a condition you're going to put, if that's the condition that's going to be put on us, then we'd have to accept it.
Correct. And so that's why I just want to remind you of that. So no one is going to be sitting at a oval dining area and only having a drink under these conditions of approval if you are in fact able to enforce compliance with this condition. So that's the end of my comments. Yes, Commissioner O'Donnell.
You and I read the word conjunction differently. Maybe we should get staff's intention. The ordinance of the town does not require you to force somebody to eat. It requires you to have food available. And we have a number of restaurants in town that are able to serve alcohol because they otherwise comply with that section. I would not want to stand in front of the restaurant and count the people who go in for a drink in the evening and leave. There's no practical way to enforce that. And I don't think the word "in conjunction with" is clear enough. If you wanted to say they must have food or they can't have a drink, that'll be a new departure for Los Gatos. But at least that would be clear.
So just hold tight, okay, because we're going to talk to staff for a second, but I don't want you to leave the podium,
With
all right?
bated breath.
Okay, because we see the word "only." All right.
Sure, and I'll look a little more closely at the policy while we're still discussing this, but generally that's kind of the distinction. You have a separate bar where you don't require meal service, but meal service is available, or you have a restaurant where alcohol is served only in conjunction with meals. So I'll take a peek and see what the specific language says, but that's how staff has looked at it, and it has been looked at differently depending on the business, and that really is the distinction of, the separate bar where food is available versus a restaurant where food is required.
Well, you and I have both been here long enough to know there are a number of restaurants in town where the same concept obtained, where in fact that does not occur and there is never any enforcement. Now, either the town is turning a blind eye, which is, I suppose, possible, or that is not the way enforcement reads it. I won't name the places, but I could, where the concept is in conjunction, and all that means is when they sit at the non-bar that they don't have permission to have, they get a drink and then they leave. Now, your understanding is then that at this non-bar, this circular non-bar, if I want a scotch and water, I've got to get a hamburger too, or something, right?
That's the way the condition's currently written. If the commission wants to forward a recommendation with something different, not requiring.
And what is
and
food? Are potato chips food?
They are not. So food does not include appetizers. There's
Okay.
language in the policy, nachos and popcorn and peanuts, or I can't remember the exact words. But if you want to allow for alcohol throughout the whole restaurant or just in this dining bar area, when meal service is available but not require meal service, then that is certainly, you're
If you
free
can
to
enforce
recommend
this,
that.
I think it's a great, I think it would address the issue. I don't think you can enforce it, but
Enforcement is a different issue that we do understand, and right now we're going through the CUP complaint discussion is still ongoing with the council, and I believe it's going to be coming back.
I don't know if
soon.
anybody's ever complained about going in and having a drink and leaving.
Understood.
Commissioner O'Donnell, if I could ask that we give Mr. Paulson an opportunity to look through that big book there, and then if I could just ask you another question, Mr. Shank. The a restaurant is described as a quality restaurant, and usually when applications come before us that involve food, we see some kind of menus. But this time you've only referred to certain, it would be like X restaurant or Y restaurant in other cities. Perhaps you could walk us through what you think of as quality, and if you could give us an idea of the typical meals that would be served there.
I think you probably saw in our letter that there were restaurants like the Los Altos Grill, like the Mayfield Bakery. I am not a chef. I mean, we're the owner, developer. So it would be left up to that operator to probably really define what this food service would be, but it would be quality meals that are indicative of those kind of places. Nice quality fish, nice quality meat, nice sides, it would be probably a dining experience where you have very educated wait staff that are educated on the menu, that are able to describe it in a way that makes you want to eat it. Things like that. I mean, things that you would expect in a nice restaurant.
So then I just have one follow-up question, and then I know there are other questions. So can I understand what your role is going to be in this restaurant then? Because it sounds like you're going to have an operator of the restaurant, and you are not going to be the operator. The owner is not going to be the operator. Is this going to be a sublease? How is this going to work?
We're going to be, this is our application for this conditional use permit. We may bring somebody on with more expertise to do this, or we've been in discussions with a tenant that would do these kind of things. But we are trying to come to you in follow-up to the CUP that's described in the PD.
That's the end of my questions. Commissioner Birch, did you have a question?
So coming forward and asking CUP and everything, but you don't know who, this could be any style of food then, really. It's still really, you're just looking to be able to get approval for a restaurant, and what's going to happen after that is still undefined.
We want what's in the letter. What's in the letter that we delivered to you. You asked about the food types. You noted that we didn't have a menu, and so I was trying to describe to you what those food types are probably going to be.
Okay, thank you.
I guess my follow-up question is then, who will apply for the alcohol permit?
Is that part of, as far as, I think is that part of, it's part of our letter that we want the full alcohol license. Is that part of the application here right now?
It's a condition of approval that you receive your alcohol and beverage permit.
Okay.
But if we're giving you this conditional use permit, and this is something perhaps we will ask the staff as well, if we're giving it to you, but the permit is going to be under a different name because there's going to be an operator, I think we will need to talk to staff about that, but why don't I move on and let other people ask questions that maybe are not related to this, but the staff knows generally what we're going to ask them about this question. Commissioner Telesfor.
A question more than a comment, but the restaurant concepts that you've identified here in your letter, those are all very upscale restaurants.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, it seems like you still haven't identified. I mean, I don't think looks like it might be a little bit hard or difficult to find someone at that level.
To find someone at this level?
Well, Chez Panisse is, that's, I mean, you're setting your, maybe like it, but, okay.
Do you want me to comment on that?
Yes.
Okay. I can't talk to you about discussions that we're having because we don't have a signed document with anybody right now. But I will tell you this, that the entity that we're talking to could absolutely deliver on what's in this CUP application based on food.
So then, Mr. Shank, if you can wait a second, just stay right there at the podium, because I do now want to ask this question of staff. So if the owner intends to have a lessee in the restaurant, and we're here talking about a CUP, and part of the condition of approval is an alcohol and beverage permit, that seems to me that we're not in sync here of what we're doing.
Staff was not aware that they were going to have a third party involved. It was represented that they were going to be the owner-operator. Now, they still are going to own the facility, operate the motel. They can hire a chef and/or restaurant manager and still oversee the operation. That just wasn't an aspect of the business that staff was aware of when we were processing the approval and going through the process. So I thought they were going to be the owner-operator.
So technically, does it make a difference?
No, they're still owning the property. They'll oversee the operation of the business, and it's in their best interest to operate it in an appropriate way. Now, as far as the ABC permit goes, they would have to apply to the ABC to get the alcohol permit. Potentially, if they get a restaurant manager, that person could do it on their behalf.
Mr. Paulson, did you want to add something? And then I know Commissioner O'Donnell wants to speak.
I think I'll wait till Commissioner O'Donnell asks his question.
My experience is that the ABC requires the town to give a use permit first, and then upon the granting of the use permit, the ABC typically, with some exceptions, will grant the license. Here, you'd be granting a use permit to be used by somebody you haven't got a clue on, right. And the ABC would say, well, the town doesn't care. So then they review it with that condition already having been met. And as we all know, the condition use permit runs with the land in any event. So it does present a problem. And I also have some problem believing if part of the reason you've got this restaurant is to service the motel, and you're going to have nothing but fine dining, and I'm a guy that drives in from the airport and at 9 o'clock at night would like to get something to eat, I probably don't want a 6-course dinner. And you're going to tell me, no, sorry, we can't serve you. I mean, it doesn't click.
All right. Mr. Shank, is there anything you'd like to share with us since you didn't use up your full 5 minutes?
If we're the ones that have to apply for the alcohol permit, we came in, as Suzanne described, as the owner that would be probably the operator of this restaurant. And if that condition needs to be placed on us so it all has that continuity, then that's fine. I was trying to give you some ideas about food and things like that, which I thought was pretty obvious in the letter that we didn't have a menu at this point. But I really would, I would really ask that a decision is made on this, because I did see sections in here that do talk about the CUP, as you mentioned, running with the land, and for us to have try to create a fruitful venture of something that complements the hotel like we're talking about here. The CUP for us is kind of like that starting point that getting the input from the town of what the parameters are that we can do is the starting point of really being able to execute what's in that letter.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Shank? Please have a seat, and then I am going to call, I have another card from Thomas. And Thomas, I'm not sure if that's your first or last name, so if you could just clarify that when you come up to speak.
Hi, it's Tomas, and last name's Findley, and it's General Delivery, Los Gatos, and my phone number's on the card there. I was at the city council meeting, I think 2 nights ago, where we talked for about an hour about a yogurt place that wanted to serve yogurt. And now I'm seeing something that's like 10 times bigger than a yogurt shop And every other sentence that I read in the thing called, it's misdated, it's called item number 2, it says April 9th, but I was told by the staff people it's supposed to say April 23. And in the 2 minutes and 20 seconds I have left, I'll try and cover them. I went to this property about 8 months ago at like 10 o'clock at night, and you couldn't even go into the hotel lobby. There's a sign that says that the Los Gatos ordinance prohibits the lobby to be open. Now, this is the place that they're planning on having people until 11:30 at night. There's obviously the health functions on the other side. I looked at the staff's copy of the plans, and they're fuzzy and almost illegible, and they don't show like what's adjacent to the things. Across the street is an office park. Across Alberto, across the fence, literally, is where people live. I've stayed at the Pueblo kind of Alberto things. And then actually straight across the street is a whole nother hotel complex with a real bar and a real restaurant. I got about 90 seconds, sorry. There's a whole bunch of, I don't know, I'll try and cover some of them. There's just a bunch of words in this item number 2 thing, like I said, dated April 9th. The big problems are that there's a lot of mistakes. The parking is a problem, the page D, whatever, parking. They've got a bunch of hours and a bunch of cars, and they're saying that everything will fit. I don't know. The negative declaration is 6 years old. That sounds like a real long time. I didn't even understand that the staff was recommending the denial until I got to near the end of the thing. And from the discussions of the applicant, it kind of sounds like, I mean, I'm not trying to be impolite, that it's kind of going by the seat of the pants that they'll just flex and become whatever it has to get this approval with this secret entity that's going to be the best in the world or whatever. I don't have any personal problems about this place, but they did take an office and they're trying to turn it into a restaurant. I don't know why they didn't do the restaurant where they said they would, so my time's up, but I think you're allowed to ask questions.
Any questions for Mr. Finley? None? So Mr. Finley, have a seat, and if the applicant has thought of anything he'd like to share with us, you have another 3 minutes.
Great, thank you, I appreciate it. Wanted to hit on one of the points that you made, Chairperson O'Donnell. You talked about 6-course meal and things like that. I mean, we're really, I'm hoping that we made the point that we're trying to make this a comfortable location. It's very approachable for people. And I don't necessarily think of a Los Altos grill like that so much, maybe as some of the other references that were made. And I just really want to be real clear on that this is the type of place where I certainly hope somebody that's coming in at night, gotten off a plane, wants some type of comfort meal and a beverage, feels more than welcome at this location. And just want to also echo on the point that the CUP, from what we're being told, as we know, runs with the land, that we want to understand the terms from you of which we can operate, and that would be for the long term, so that we know in the future, as we're talking to different people, or as if like that we know what your guidance would be. So I just want to make sure that you guys realize we know the CUP runs with the land and that we want to be good stewards of that.
Thank you, Mr. Shank. Commissioner O'Donnell, I just have one question that perhaps could clear this up. Just one question. You're going to have a walk-up window for takeout food. Can you just, on Exhibit 8, tell me where that is?
Sure. So if you see at the bottom where it says restaurant layout at the very bottom.
Oh, there we go.
You see tray planter and you go directly to your left, you'll see to go.
Yes.
It's right off the proposed kitchen right there. Do you see the words to
yes,
go
of
right
course.
there? Yep.
So they park in your main parking lot, and then they're going to come around to the to-go window. Mm-hmm. Is that what you're telling us?
This could be, in many cases, hotel guests, and it could also be the neighborhood
Walk-up
folks,
residents.
the office
Okay.
folks across the street walking up in,
All right.
in many, many cases.
All right, thank you. Commissioner O'Donnell?
You've indicated to us, I think more than once, that what's important to you tonight is to get a decision, which I take to mean yes or no is really irrelevant because you're prepared to go to the council and we're sort of just a necessary step you take, which sometimes is true. But what I'm concerned about is the level of planning here is very, very sketchy. I think the reference to a yogurt shop is somewhat apt. These plans are among the most incomplete plans I've looked at in a long time. And your description of what you intend to do is equal to your plans. So I take your presentation tonight to be pleased. Don't send us back and come up with some good things. Just turn us down. So is that your position?
I think that's a pretty difficult description for me to internalize right here because we're trying to do something really good for the hotel and be very complimentary to the hotel. And I think I made the point earlier that this CUP is kind of point one for us to understand the town's requirements of us in order to, what parameters do we have to work within in order to execute on a quality restaurant. I think while we haven't come to you with an exact menu, I think we've come to you with a concept that is being replicated a lot of different places that could be, that to us, and we're close to it, I'll admit, but that we think we fairly well understand it. And I'm sorry to hear how you feel about our plan here, but yet we would like a decision, and we would like, I think, a decision that if it's an approval with conditions that would make it better, of course that's what we would want.
Thank you.
All right, Mr. Shank, that looks like that's the end of our questions, and so I'm going to close the public portion of the public hearing. No, I'm sorry, Mr. Finley, but you've had your opportunity to speak, and so now we are the.
I'm sorry to address that, but close mine, you said that he spoke.
That's correct.
Additional 3.
No.
That's what you said. What did you say?
No, we are, the applicant has the final say-so and the final 3 minutes.
Okay.
All right?
I understand that you're trying to say.
Mr. Finley, I cannot be addressing you now. You're a member of the audience, and I have closed the public portion of the public hearing. And you are welcome to submit any further comments you have in writing, either through email or delivery to the staff. We are going to move on to consider this proposal. Mr. Erickson, Commissioner Erickson.
I actually wanted to ask a question of the applicant before you closed, but I'll respect the fact that the chair.
Did you, you mean of Mr. Shank?
Yes.
Oh, I did not see your hand, and I apologize for that. So.
But I can go either way.
Okay, so
I don't make it difficult for the chair.
I'm suggesting that right now we have closed the public portion of the public hearing. And thank you, Commissioner Erickson, and I apologize to you. But I think that we need to move ahead. All right, so now we are at a point where we can make our comments, questions of staff, or anyone is willing to make a motion. Commissioner Erickson.
So I don't share Commissioner O'Donnell's concern about the level of specificity. There's enough specificity for me in this proposal to have an understanding. I've eaten at 3 of the 4 restaurants that they cite as examples. I wouldn't put Chez Panisse in the same category with Mayfield Bakery and Los Gatos Grill, but clearly, Commissioner O'Donnell, if you were coming in on a plane, you stayed there, and you wanted to eat something at 9 o'clock at night, and if it was Los Altos Grill or Mayfield Bakery, it would meet what your requirements are. So I take they're in that neighborhood. But I have a question before, because I'm going to introduce a motion, but I have a question for the staff that I forgot what it was. Anyway.
Well, we'll come back to you because I'll bet there's some other commissioners that want to make a comment. So, am I correct? Commissioner Sayak. Oh, Commissioner Erickson, you've remembered?
So, it's not, I believe it's not atypical in the town for the operator of a restaurant not to be the owner of the property and not to hold the conditional use permit. Is that correct?
It's not uncommon.
Right. So it's not unusual. So in all of those cases, the operator, if I understand correctly, the operator is one who has to hold the ABC license. Yeah, that's
I think
that's my experience.
Yeah,
I would
typically,
say
it typically is the operator that holds the license,
right,
and they may or may not be the original applicant or property owner for the conditional use
correct.
permit.
I believe the ABC issues it to the operator, not to the landowner. I mean, the landowner is also the operator that would issue to the operator. So I guess we won't know. I mean, so the ABC, so we're requiring the, what I interpret, whatever that number is, we're requiring them to be in compliance with the law before they simply, all we're saying is they need to assure that whether they operate themselves or they would have an operator operate it on their property, that they would be in compliance with the law and be licensed by the ABC to do whatever they need to do, which I would assume is in a lot of other CUPs in the town. So it seems like to me that's the case. Just to be clear about that.
That's correct.
Commissioner Sayak.
Actually, Commissioner Erickson had asked the questions that I was going to ask, in that what is our normal process, but I understand now that, so let me change gears. Oh, that. Is there anything that we could put in a CUP that would influence the ABC license? Or are they just completely separate?
So when the ABC gets a application to obtain a liquor license, the first thing they will do is contact the town to find out if they have the ability at that location, and that's where we would respond saying that they have a CUP and here's, they don't even ask what the conditions are. They're just asking the town whether if that location has the necessary local permits to operate as either whatever the license they're seeking.
Okay, and so the little variations that we would put within each applicant, whether the whole conjunction discussion with food, that's not something that they even take. It's a yes or no for them. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
We do have some influence insofar as we have a right to approve the layout of the restaurant. This layout, what I've heard so far at least, is objectionable. So if we were to approve tonight, we'd be approving this large circular bar, which I, for one, would not do. So it may be that this commission has observed plans that were this sparse, but I don't think we should approve a plan that encourages a bar of this length. It's open. The applicant's reasonable, said you don't have to have it open past 10 if that's important to you. I appreciate that attitude. And even said it isn't critical that we have this circular bar. On the other hand, please don't ask us to go back and draw something else. So unless we're prepared to sit here tonight and design his bar for him, or his, excuse the expression, then we have one choice. That is, we either approve this large circular bar or we don't. And the plans, one, I would not approve that large circular bar, and two, I don't find much detail in this. For example, finding out where the walk-up window is may raise some questions, because one of the things that we were first concerned about in this proposal back in 2007 or 6 when it first came before us was the parking. And now, you know, we have another parking study, but we've never had to put it to use, and to the extent that this restaurant is successful, it will be successful in the evening at exactly the same time that the motel, hotel, whatever it is at its most successful. In the past, we said the front of the building would be busy in the daytime and not at night. Now we want to approve something that will be busy at night and probably not in the daytime. Meanwhile, we have a motel which would only be busy at night. And we say, fine. So it's possible that one could draw this plan up so that it would deal with some of these issues, but I think we're being told, no, we'd rather you turn it down and we'll take it to the council. So unless we're prepared to send it back and say, come up with something more reasonable instead of a bar, then I guess we'll just entertain a motion to say yes or no.
Commissioner Birch, you're going to be next, and then Commissioner Sayoc, but in the meantime, we do have a clarification on the ABC license.
Your question regarding the operator holding the license threw me for a loop a little bit because it was a restaurant, and I was thinking about the experiences that I've experienced, and because it's a hotel, you do sometimes see the license has to be held by the operator of the bar, but you sometimes see, especially in hotels, where they sublet the restaurant or eating establishment, so that you can, and that's where I was having the confusion, but the license does have to be held by the operator. So, but many times in restaurants, the food is then sublet out to, you know, whoever is operating the restaurant, but not the bar area. Yeah, you could, in this situation, you could have a separate, so you could have the owner leased to the bar area, and they could have the ABC license, and then have a separate sublet for the restaurant area.
Does that answer the question that who would hold the license?
Who's
for the bar?
For the bar area would be the person that's serving the alcohol.
And it's the same with where that we're serving the restaurant. That also would be the operator. So in no event does the owner have to have the license.
No, unless he's the actual operator of the bar.
Okay, thanks.
That's where sometimes you see it, where the owner retains control of the bar area and the proceeds from the bar area, and then sublets the restaurant area out to the subletter.
Thank you. And Commissioner Birch and then Commissioner Sayoc.
So I was going to further discuss a little bit what Commissioner O'Donnell was saying, and what you said at the end, because I don't feel that we have just a yes or no in front of us. I do feel as a commission that if we want more information and we want to see more, we have a right to ask for that. And I've not been on this commission as long as everyone else, but this is the sparsest set of drawings that I've seen, particularly for something as sensitive as a CUP, with alcohol use running with the land. And I personally would feel very uncomfortable passing anything on without more information. It feels like it's a lot of just what's in the letter and what's sketched here, and I think we've all expressed some concern. So I agree with you, Commissioner O'Donnell, that we do have that third option if we choose to exercise it.
Commissioner Sayoc.
Well, I was going to, speaking of options, I wanted to ask if it's all or nothing. Similar to our last application, we have a use, at least I have a use, a restaurant use that I think is appropriate for this area. As when we discussed the original concept, there was a restaurant attached to it, and there were significant discussions about a need for a restaurant in that area. So that's one area that I'm prepared to move forward with. It's the alcohol, full alcohol that is associated with it. So my question is if is it somehow possible to send forward the restaurant portion while the alcohol use is being negotiated or given more information on, or is it all or nothing?
Well, it would not be typical to send forward just the restaurant, because if it was just a restaurant without alcohol, then the Planning Commission would approve it.
Okay.
So it's the alcohol that moves forward
Got
to
it.
the Town Council.
Okay.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
I just want to share with you that we have done something in the past where the number of seats is quite relevant. If you approve something like a restaurant, with the concept that you're going to approve a bar later on down, you're going to talk about the capacity of the restaurant. We've had problems with saying the capacity is X and finding out subsequently that it's really X plus 20 or whatever. And we've also had trouble approving a layout and finding out later it had a bar. Now, that bar was never on the plans, and those booths, in some instances, were never on the plans, and those seats were never on the plans. So the more vague your plan is, I mean, it's bad enough when they don't pay any attention to the plans you can read, but when you have plans that are not definite, then it's an invitation to well, non-compliance. So I just wanted to respond by saying I think the answer is correct, and I'm glad that's the way because it doesn't work.
I will make a comment then, and that is that I very much want to send this on to the town council because I do believe that the not just the patrons of the hotel motel, but the neighbors will support a restaurant. However, what concerns me this evening is the applicants does not seem to have a firm grasp on the requirements that we are asking of the applicant. For instance, in Exhibit 5, the conditions of approval 7 and 8, when we talk about a standalone bar, I read Condition 8 as there isn't going to be a standalone bar because if you order a drink, you have to order something to eat, only in conjunction with meal service. And I'm not certain that the applicant really understood that himself. So I would agree that this is a situation where we could ask the applicant to come back with more well-defined plans for operation of this business. Commissioner Talasfor.
Thank you. I would agree with everything I've heard here tonight. The only two things I wanted to add was in looking at your plans on Exhibit 8 and then A1 and also A2, your hotel breakfast room changes in each of those plans, it looks like. And I'm not sure how you plan on using that room at all. So that's one area that I would have a definite question about. And the bar, or this form, this structure that I see here, it is so dominant in this room. It really just stood out to us. It's almost off-putting. And I think that I would definitely look at softening that as we're suggesting to you. And I know that you are in a rush or a hurry, but what I was going to ask staff is there a way that if they could come back to us sooner than, if there's some hurry to get this approved? And I know that you're trying desperately to finish all of the rooms, and I appreciate that as a resident here. But, so I want to ask, can we somehow put this on a...
If the commission wants to set a special meeting just for this, your next two meetings are completely full. So we would not be able to get back till the beginning of June.
Very full. They are. And I don't have an idea. Only to say that it's just too incomplete.
Commissioner O'Donnell.
May I suggest that those of us who think perhaps a continuance would be in order, express some desire of what we'd like to see, because whatever we set by way of hearing, and I'm not trying to slow this project down, no. But if we just send them back and we're a little vague about it, it's not going to help them either. So I, for one, am very troubled by what I will call the bar area, and I believe that could be changed so that it wasn't such an obvious large bar. Other than that, I guess I'd like to see a little detail so that I know for a fact what the seat count is in the restaurant, so we don't find out that we thought we were approving X and it's really X plus 20. And I don't know that we've had much explanation of this pickup window, namely, it clearly, I would imagine, can't be there just to service 48 hotel rooms. Therefore, it will probably generate some traffic. And I don't remember that traffic being taken into account in the traffic study. Perhaps it was, and I just didn't see that. So I'd like some consideration of what kind of volume that pickup window would generate traffic-wise, because I'm very concerned that these people will be very successful, which I hope them to be. And I hope the motel is very successful. And the building is now full. But I've seen success mean you can't park. So those are the things I'm interested in. So if anybody else is at all supportive of continuing this, it would be very helpful if we know, or let the applicant know what you'd like to see in the plans.
Commissioner Erickson.
So my sense of the feedback we're giving to you would be relatively simple. Eliminate the bar, make it a restaurant without a separate bar. And if my counting of your seating in there, I get 84, it says 82. So conform it to 82, eliminate the bar. You also need to conform with Section 2.8 of the alcohol policy, which says there needs to be appropriate separation and an outdoor seating area, and having a decorative planter that doesn't actually close that off doesn't meet that standard from my standpoint. So I would be happy either to let you come back to continue it with those kind of conditions, or even introduce a motion to approve it with those kind of conditions.
Commissioner Talasfor.
And I'd like to add to the private dining room, if that could be explained a little more about how that's to service the guests of the hotel and what it means by private.
Yes, Commissioner O'Donnell.
I just want to say one thing to Commissioner Erickson's comment, because I think those were accurate comments. But I would like to say that I'm not so much concerned that there not be a place in the room where alcohol can be served from, because clearly we're not saying you can't serve drinks in this place. And when you say there can't be a bar, which I think we mean a place where people can go up and sit and have a drink, and I'm not even sure we mean that, because a good restaurant a lot of times has a waiting area where you can come up, sit, wait for your table, and have a drink. And I'm not opposed to that. The only thing I was questioning is, do you need, I don't know what the dimensions of that bar would be, but it's huge. So, yes, sure, it'd be simple if you didn't have any bar at all, I guess. But if you want to have a bar for purposes of serving people before they get a table, I'm not opposed to that. But you could sure make it a lot easier if you didn't have a huge circular bar as the key point of this restaurant. So that's what I'm concerned with. So I just want to, Commissioner Erickson's concern could be the predominant concern, but it's not my predominant concern.
If I could just ask a question of staff, when the traffic count was done, was the takeout window considered? I know there was a number of traffic counts in here and traffic analysis. I don't know how that could be done, but I'm just wondering if it was done in some fashion.
I don't believe it was. I will have to verify that with the town traffic engineer. He looked at an 82-seat restaurant in doing the traffic generation, and I don't know if there's a distinction in the ITE or any of the other acceptable. I'm not aware that there is anything that really would address a walk-up window like that.
I think it's one of those challenges, just to add, the intent from, as I understand it, through the materials and through the applicant's testimony tonight, is to have a quality restaurant. The to-go is an ancillary. Now, should the to-go piece be popular, then that may or may not create issues depending on whether those people are driving to the site or whether they're coming from the local surrounding businesses and or residents. So I'm not sure that there's going to be a quantifiable ITE designation that's going to take that kind of scenario into account, but we surely can take a look at that with the traffic engineer.
Well, as I read the information, though, the to-go window is also going to be used by the servers in the restaurant to pick up their food to be served.
I'm assuming for the outdoor patio area, that would make a cleaner, because it's attached directly to the kitchen, so those folks sitting on the patio, rather than coming in and out of the doors, then they would have a cleaner offering from taking the food directly from the kitchen to those tables, but I can't confirm that. That's something I have to confirm.
Commissioner Talasfor, and then just so that you know, Commissioners, after Commissioner Talasfor, I'm going to ask if someone would like to make a motion.
So I would think that the to-go window might also be applicable to the people staying in the hotel to pick food up instead of sitting in the restaurant to take it back to their room.
Sure, that's a
I mean, I could see
possibility.
that that's a good possibility. As far as the bar is concerned, in hotels, oftentimes, if you are, you're singly staying there, sometimes there is some comfort at sitting at a bar and having a meal, and I would assume that this bar would serve some type of a meal. So it wouldn't bother me to have some type of a bar eating area. If you lessen the bars, I mean, it's so dominant, you certainly could include other tables in there for more casual dining. So, you might want to consider it. That would be my suggestion. Other than that,
All right, do I have a willing volunteer for a motion? All right, Commissioner O'Donnell.
The continuance would be for the purpose of the applicant responding with a clearer drawing, and that drawing would respond to the concerns which we have identified, which I won't repeat, but we've just gone through that. I would also suggest that some consideration be given to any traffic impact that is possible to be quantified with the to-go window. Because as I said before, I think parking is going to be could be, if they're successful, a very serious problem. Now, the fact that the international associations don't have that, it's all very interesting, but I would at least like them to take a look. I mean, it's hard for me to believe that nobody's ever done a traffic study on drive-up or pick-up windows. If there's nothing out there, there's nothing out there. But if there is, I'd like to know what it is. So we've identified these things. I'm moving that we continue it, and I'm going to ask for a date certain.
I just remembered we do have an opportunity potentially pending the May 21st. We could continue to May 21st, which is a special meeting that the commission is holding for a workshop, and it also now has another item on it, but we could continue that at the discretion of the chair, of course.
Town attorney could be very brief at that meeting, I assume. All right, so.
So do I have a second for Commissioner O'Donnell? And that would be Commissioner Birch.
I will second that motion.
All right. And then if I could make a comment, I know you did not want to go through everything, Commissioner O'Donnell, but what I understand the tasks of the applicant are going to be to bring back to us on May 21st will be a redesign of the bar dining area, more detail on the seat count, a more clear traffic pattern within the boundaries of the property. And
Commissioner Erickson also wanted a more clear definition separating the entry patio area from the rest, because liquor will be served in that patio.
all right, and more clear definition of the alcohol service and separation of the patio area. And any other commissioner have something that we haven't covered that needs to be covered? Anything from staff?
Commissioner Talasfor had mentioned something that didn't get put in
The
there. She
private
wanted some
dining room.
clarification between the private dining room versus the breakfast room, and so just to kind of,
Okay,
how that's all
and-
going to operate.
And ultimately, we would like to be provided with drawings that we can extrapolate information from correctly, because there are several sets of drawings here that have different aspects to them, conflicting aspects to them. All in favor of that motion? Aye. None opposed. It passes unanimously. And to the applicant, we will see you on May 21st. Thank you. We have no continued other business. Do we have a report from the Director of Community Development?
We do. So since the last meeting, the DRC has met twice. On April 15th, they met for an item at 222 Bella Vista, which was a certificate of compliance and a lot line adjustment, which was approved. And on April 22nd, they considered a time extension for an approval at 248 Jared Lane for construction of a new single-family residence. The council actually has also met twice since we last met. On April 14th, they reconsidered the appeal of the two architecture and site applications at 16560 Shannon Road and granted that appeal, approving those two homes. They also considered the appeal of 16268 Los Gatos Boulevard, which is the office building the Planning Commission approved, and they denied that appeal, so that project will be moving forward. And on Monday of this week, they had a study session to consider the role of the consulting architect, and they sent the resolution 2002-25 back to staff, which ultimately will return to the Planning Commission to look at revisions to eliminate any presumption of absolute validity from the consulting architect's recommendations, and kind of loosening the findings that are required, or eliminating those that are required for the commission to make if they want to modify any of those recommendations. And then they also looked at the yogurt shop, which was discussed this evening, and they granted that appeal, so the yogurt shop was approved. And that concludes the director's report. If you have any questions, here to answer them.
Thank you, Mr. Paulson. I see no questions. Are there any commission matters to be discussed? Seeing none, this meeting is adjourned. Thank you.